on Zoom. He's joining us, just not in person because he had a call. That's Steve's spot. He was I did. He emailed like 20 minutes ago. He was like, I have a lingering call.
Oh,
I
here
don't want to
he
get
is. He is online.
These two.
Well, I'll keep his seat warm.
Okay.
Maybe just closed it.
Okay.
Well, we have, oh, yeah, we have Steve online.
Laura, you want some food? No, there's
Yeah,
Somebody
there's
is-
lots and lots
Oh my
of
gosh.
food.
Got
And
meat?
it's really good.
So good.
I know. I'm like, I kind of want to have seconds.
Gosh.
Okay.
Link.
Very good. Is everybody sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin. Okay, I'd like to call to order a regular meeting of the Planning Commission.
Is your microphone on?
Yes. Actually, it is. I'm just not close enough to it. Would you like to do a roll call?
Chairman Harper,
Present.
Vice Chair Rose,
Present.
Commissioner Vaughn.
Here.
Commissioner Whitty,
Here.
Commissioner Barnes, Commissioner Gordon, Commissioner Mojo,
Here.
Commissioner Grosh,
Here.
Commissioner Shanahan.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Good. It doesn't look as if we have any public comment at the moment. There are no attendees online, and I think the two people in the hall are actually going to make presentations, right? Okay, so we'll open and close public comment in 5 seconds flat. I'll move on to approval of the minutes of our January the 21st meeting. Would someone like to propose approving those minutes?
I will.
Second.
All those in, do we have to have a roll, well, I guess we have to have a roll call on
Yeah.
that because Steve's here.
Steve's
Yeah, we're online. So
on TV.
Chairman Harper,
Yes,
Vice Chair Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Vaughn,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitty,
Yes.
Commissioner Mojo,
Yes.
Commissioner Gross,
Yes.
Commissioner Shanahan.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
okay, I think those meetings are approved and we can move on to the business of the evening, which is an update on the Compton transportation plans. Do you want to open that discussion, Renee?
Sure. So we have the comprehensive plan consultant here to talk about the comprehensive plan update. And then we have Alex Bullen from town staff, the Public Works Department, to go over the transportation plan update. Do you want to do a opening or are we?
I think we're just going to start with Alex for the transportation plan update. And then this is a little, feel free to take as much time as you want, but this particular portion is a little less robust than the comprehensive plan discussion. So we'll do the transportation plan first.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, please.
All right, Alex, you're up.
Sure. Alex Bullen, Public Works and Utilities Program Supervisor. As Lisa and Renee mentioned, going to present an update to you all on our transportation plan. This is our 2025 update. The last transportation plan was approved in 2014. So this is our 10-year opportunity to once again take a look at the transportation system in Superior, look at different uses, plan for the future, get public comment, and generally try to have a robust plan for how we want the transportation plan to look in 10 years and how we're going to get there. So I have a few slides here. I'll do my best not to just read off the slides, but it is the end of the day, so, if I need to look up there, so try not to bore you too much. So transportation plan, as I mentioned, it's basically it's a guiding document for our transportation system. It's a broad it's a broad view. It looks at different uses, it looks at projects, it looks at coordination with other agencies like CDOT, RTD, neighboring cities. It involves a public comment process, consultant advice, staff ideas on what we need, and really tries to put everything together into one document. And then, of course, a plan is only as good as the things you do with the plan. So we have some strategies to achieve our goals. We have these MOEs, measures of effectiveness, to make sure that we're meeting our goals. We look at, what's changed. One example of something that's changed is as our traffic counts and our traffic patterns through COVID changed significantly. So we went through and retimed a lot of our lights to meet the current demand rather than just what had been, what the demand was pre-COVID. So we look at those kinds of things. And then there's a little bit of visioning. What do we think transportation is going to look like in 10 years? We have new technology like autonomous vehicles coming in, connected vehicles. There's more micro-mobility options going on. E-bikes are everywhere now. Scooters were all the rage a few years ago. But now that e-bikes are more affordable, that's becoming a mode of choice for a lot of people. So we get to do a little bit of that fun brainstorming of, well, what do we think it's going to be? And what are other cities doing? And that kind of thing. And we also, it's a big public comment process. We solicit feedback not just from residents, but from emergency services, consultants, elected officials. And we've been doing this over a series of several months. So it's not just one opportunity to comment. We've been meeting people in person, online, and trying to get as much input as we can. And then that last line is just, this gives direction for projects. Anyone can go out and see, okay, Rock Creek Parkway needed resurfacing. Oh, okay, great. But what are the other opportunities for the strategies that the town wants for its transportation system? So that's why they looked at reducing the lanes and more multimodal friendly options on Rock Creek Parkway. It wasn't just the immediate need, it was how do we build it to be better in the future? Oh, and this is just a cool map. This is a map from our 2014 transportation plan. And you can see a lot of these did get completed. The diverging diamond interchange got completed. This doesn't list, but the RTD airport bus, that was a goal in the 2014 plan. That got completed. We're still looking at roundabout on Rock Creek and Coal Creek. And then you can see our fledgling downtown streets there, which is kind of neat to see how it was visioned 11 years ago. So went over a few of our goals and projects that were already completed or no longer applicable, like the Jefferson Parkway is one project that was a big push that Superior was involved with a lot. And that project is on hold indefinitely. We'll continue to monitor it, but it's not something that we need to advocate for or against too much right now. So again, this is our opportunity to take a look at our system, how it's being used, and where we want it to go over the next 5 to 10 years. And we're right in that time clock of when cities generally update their transportation plans. We started this process last year, which puts us right at that 10-year mark. And then, as you know, this is concurrent with the update of the comprehensive land use plan, and then also our traffic safety specific plan, our Vision Zero action plan that we've been working on for about a year. And that centers a lot more on specific solutions to traffic safety issues. And we've been doing all kinds of surveys and analysis around that. And that'll be coming forth to the TSC the end of March. And then we're hoping to take that to council May to June. So it's been a planning heavy kind of year, which has been nice. So this goes over a little bit of what we've been doing so far. We've done extensive public outreach at Chili Fest, July 4th, surveys, Winterfest. We are currently working on the state of the system analysis, which looks at traffic counts and signal timing and capacity of roadways to see, what kind of delays are people having at intersections? Are there turning movements that are getting too many backups with their queues? What time of day? And some of these more specific scenarios. And then we will, in tandem, look at some of the land use scenarios that planning and Nora are working on to look at some of the things that are coming down the line, not just in Superior, but in neighboring communities that will affect our transportation system, such as the CU housing getting built across 36 there at the old Cinnabar movie theater, and then what's the name of the development there off of 88th Street, the old Phillips property? Red Tail Ridge. So, and then Broomfield, of course, always seems to be growing. So, we're going to take a look at some of those land use scenarios and prepare for additional capacity, whether that's through lanes or signal retiming or TOD solutions, things like that. And after we do that, we'll develop a working document. We'll come up with a project list, specific projects, and then strategies for implementing those projects. So we'll look at funding, we'll look at timing, things like that. So this provides a general schedule of the project. So we are currently in February. So public outreach continues through the process. We just finished coming up with our goals and policies, and at the end of this, we'll share our draft vision statement for the overall document. State of the system analysis is coming soon. I'm pretty excited about that one because I like to get into the fine-tuned details of turning movements and traffic signal timing and how we can make it better on a boots on the ground level. And then we'll look into our design scenarios and eventually put the document together. And I won't touch too much on public outreach because I know the comp plan presentation has quite a bit of that. But just a few little bits of information here. This is a map that kind of collates a lot of the public comment that we got from the festivals and from the surveys. You can see where people have a lot to say about certain intersections or certain areas. We asked questions about, well, what's working well, what's not working well. And some of our takeaways is that other than obvious, Marshall McCaslin is always a busy intersection. Other than some of those obvious comments, there wasn't really a big problem area. Folks tend to have more to say around where they live and where they travel, which of course makes sense. We did find that the trails are a big thing. People love the trails in Superior. We have a very robust trail system. Folks are using it for recreation and for travel, which is fantastic. And it continues to be important for folks. Folks want to see more trails. They want to see more connectivity. They want to see more pedestrian-friendly facilities. Airport noise, of course, is something that gets talked about a lot. Pedestrian crossing concerns. We do have these very wide roadways, Rock Creek Parkway, Colton, McCaslin, they're all quite wide, and folks don't necessarily feel safe crossing them. We've installed flashing beacons and done some other treatments, but the fact remains that it's a 80-foot wide road, right? So we're looking into some different strategies to make folks more comfortable with crossing those streets, because those do tend to be barriers to, well, I would walk or bike, but I don't feel safe crossing this one street. Okay, well, if we can make that crossing more comfortable and safe, then we enable people to use the mode of their choice. We did get a lot of kudos, thumbs up for the existing trails and the raised crossings. The raised crossings are where you have trails on either side of the road, and then it's almost like a speed bump, but it's also a trail. So we got some kudos for that. And folks did have good things to say about the AB and the Flatiron Flat Earth transit lines. We continue to work with RTD to improve the connectivity. They're a little challenging to work with at times, but we're getting the 228 rerouted through downtown. That's something that we're excited about. Well, that's just a general summary of what folks had to say. And we can dive in a little bit more. I won't spend too much time on this, but this is another way to view the results. People want to see more trails and paths. They want us to plan for growth in our community and in our neighboring communities. They want us to improve connections to transit. That first and final mile connection is often a big barrier to folks wanting to take the bus. there are a few spots in town that are missing sidewalk connections, so taking a look at that. Traffic safety is always something that's on people's minds as far as running lights and speeding, adding crosswalks, reducing congestion. Yeah. Oh, we can skip over this. I went over most of that there. So this kind of shows, how it all works together. So we formed a vision statement, which I'll show you at the end. And then how do we achieve that vision? Well, we have these goals that we want to achieve. How do we achieve the goals? We have strategies to achieve the goals. And then how do we achieve our strategies? There are specific recommendations. Maybe we change the left turn phasing on this intersection, and that achieves the strategy of making this intersection safer, which achieves our goal of getting more people to use the mode of their choice, et cetera. So it's a little wordsmithy, but it does all work together. So this is our draft vision statement. A safe and sustainable transportation system which meets the needs of all people using all modes of travel, is supportive of strategic economic development, and minimizes environmental impacts. So we wanted to have a single statement that would capture all the things that our transportation system does. It's great to talk about bikes and peds, but we also need to make sure that Costco and Target and Whole Foods can get their goods so we can get our sales tax. And we want to have an eye towards sustainability. If we need to improve capacity, we don't necessarily want to add more lanes. We want to look at other options for moving more people through the same space. And then here are some example draft goals. So this is that second part down from the pyramid. How are we going to achieve this vision? Well, we have these goals. We want mobility for all users, whether you drive, walk, bike, have vision trouble. We want everyone to be able to get around to wherever they're going. We want our land use to work well with our transportation. We want our commercial corridors to work the way they should. We want our residential corridors to work the way they should. We want new development to come in and improve the transportation system, not just go based on what's already there. We want to collaborate internally with our neighbors, with other districts that affect transportation like RTD and CDOT. Regional partners like DRCOG who help us get federal funding for highway improvement projects. We want to consider equity, sustainability, resiliency, environmental impact. We put these all together because they're pretty related in terms of making sure that everybody, again, not everyone can afford a car, not everyone's able to drive a car. So we want to capture this and make sure that we're serving everybody. Parking is an issue in town. Downtown we have the new parking program. We want to continue to monitor that. We want to continue to work with our shopping center owner to look at opportunities to redevelop some of their empty parking lot spaces. Transportation maintenance is, of course, very important. Keeping our roads safe, clear from potholes, plowing the roads. This being a holistic document, we have that in there as well. And then public health and safety. We want to work through our traffic safety processes to reduce our crashes, specifically the severe outcome crashes. We want everyone to feel safe as possible. And then also consider the public health aspect of there are benefits to folks getting out of their cars, either carpooling or biking, walking, etc. And then these are our next steps. So as I mentioned, we're going to the TSC at the end of March. And we're in the process of reviewing our existing, our state of the system. We're going to look at the land use scenarios and see how that informs what we're planning to do project-wise. And then we'll eventually take it to the town council to go over the plan recommendations, the specific projects that, we have drafts, but it's not quite developed yet. And then with council's approval, we'll adopt the plan or edit the plan and then bring it back. And we'll just keep going. that's our bird's eye view on where the transportation plan is at today. I'm happy to answer any questions, or this is my contact. I can answer any questions that come up, or any ideas, or if you didn't have an opportunity to provide input on, problem areas or things you'd like to see happen, there's still certainly time to send me an email or give me a call, and we can get that incorporated.
Just as a parent of three, I always have to say, like, the school, I've talked to people in other areas where everyone's guaranteed a school bus, and they have a late bus to pick kids up from there, and we have like none of that, even for our neighborhood schools. There's no school bus. And it used to be that we just live across Rock Creek Parkway from Superior, but because that was a big intersection, we were guaranteed a bus, but then they didn't provide one, but then they provided like a crossing guard. And like, it's just, I don't know how it just keeps getting worse with school buses around here. And I just wonder if we can somehow mitigate that as a town, knowing that BVSD is not providing buses at all. And if there's some way to because our kids are old enough now that they can walk across Rock Creek Parkway on their own, and it's fine. But if we somehow were able to connect our schools so that if you lived next to Superior Elementary, you could hop on that bus and go to either Monarch or Eldo. I just see me and everyone in my neighborhood. We do carpool with a couple families, but it's just one after another, dropping these kids off this huge, because we don't have any buses. It's just this huge stream of parents at school time dropping off and picking up, and it feels like there could be a better way.
That's good feedback. As you know, there are some buses, just to be clear, there are some buses for some school routes that serve Superior kiddos, but probably not as nearly as what there used to be. But I think, ongoing collaboration with BVSD in terms of, impacts to their transportation decisions and how that impact our local residents. I think that could be something that this plan acknowledges and probably more deliberately plans for, some consideration around, BVSD has the Safe Routes to School program and other things like that, but where can we partner and improve and collaborate together to improve those outcomes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be a great time to capture that in one of our goals or strategies, because I don't think we did, but it is a concern. And, it seems like they didn't know how many buses they would have at the start of school, which I don't know if that's a new thing for them. And the routes are
COVID, it's been, who knows?
Definitely decreased service for sure.
They did reach out and ask that we add a sign at one of the raised crossings because their substitute bus driver didn't see it. So we know they have at least one bus driver.
I think they have a couple, but it's hard to determine. I think it's mostly for elementary school kids, and everyone else has to figure out their own way.
There are some buses that serve Monarch, but I don't know the routes and how far away you have to be to the school. I know some of it is once you get a certain distance away from the school. And so I think those distances have increased. So I know there are still some busing for high school and middle school students, but I don't know the criteria.
I think, just from the one person as I drive to Monarch, I see one kid in a whole 50-foot bus getting picked up and taken, and it's my son's friend. So, and they're like, yeah, he shows up every day on the bus alone. And I know his his mom's a teacher. So maybe that somehow qualifies him, but it's really strange that it's one person for middle school.
I have a couple of points that I'm just going to go through, and then tell you that I'm going to be looking to the transportation plan to see where these are discussed or fit in. 88th Street, from the roundabout up through into Louisville towards Monarch is a big question, because when that whole area is 4 lanes up to the 2 lanes each way to the roundabout, and then it goes into a 2-lane that just goes up 88th Street. And the big question for me, and again, tied into that red tail development, is what's going to happen to traffic that's going to go up in there and come back in, or try to avoid the what may be the major entrance into Red Tail by going up 88th Street. And so I'm really looking for the idea of whether or not that portion of 88th Street needs to be expanded and widened. So that's one issue. Second issue is sort of working the other way. Up to, I guess it's Rock Creek Parkway going south on McCaslin is 4 lanes until it hits that area, and then it transitions down to 2. And I'm going to see, I think that as we look to the future, we're going to see a lot more traffic coming in and out of that area. And the question is whether or not widening that piece of the highway is a doable or not doable, or something that's smart or not smart. Number 3 is bus transportation generally, and that is working with RTD to try to see if buses can go down south and instead of just turning on Rock Creek Parkway, go all the way to the circle and make the circle and head down Colton. That's a big area. There's a lot of people down there, and we have the potential for some usage in land down there, and with Town 15. And the question is, what kind of accessibility are we going to be dealing with? So I'm going to be looking to I would be looking to the transportation plan to sort of answer that kind of question. And I had a 4th, but it has now escaped me. Oh, it has now reminded me, because we talked a little bit about this in there, and that is exit strategies from Superior Marketplace and entrance into Superior Marketplace from 36. And again, I would love to see some thought and discussion as to whether or not working with the CDOT to gain an exit ramp on the 36, I guess it's 36 East, to get us into Superior Marketplace from Boulder. And conversely, whether or not there's a possibility of creating a strategy whereby the bus entrance and exit by the off of 36 might be usable as an emergency exit strategy if something ever happened into the Superior Marketplace, to get cars out of that area if we needed to. Those are the 4 things that I'm just going to send to you to be thinking about, because I think that those are some things about, as we look to the future and see an increase in population, increase usage, increase vitality, whether or not those things are some things that we should be thinking about over the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I'm looking forward to seeing some of those capacity analyses around 88th Street and McCaslin. That'll be great to see. The third one, the exit ramp. I think that'd be great. Something we've talked about before, but it's been a while. So we should revisit that and see, what would that even look like?
Yeah, I got shot down about 8 years ago on that one, but it's time again to think about it. I mean, we were looking at some numbers about how many people go into Superior Marketplace, but they all go the same route, and it just turns that intersection of McCaslin and Marshall into a mad dash. Depending on which way you're coming out of that intersection. And if there was a way to get people in and ultimately out of the area without going that route, it might be beneficial. We might actually see, a stimulation of the economy if it was easier to get in and out of.
Right, yeah, being able to access it from the west rather than just the east.
Yeah. I mean, coming from the east may be difficult. I'm interested to see what's going to happen as CU develops that property across the street for housing, because it's just simply going to mean that if I read the tea leaves, that there are going to be a lot more people taking the bus, getting off at that intersection or that transit stop, crossing, walking over the bridge, getting into that area, and conversely going back into Boulder on the north side. But that's going to mean more people coming into that area in one way or another, and we just got to be aware of how that's going to impact us.
Right. Yeah, and we'll monitor the traffic signal timing on that, and we're also looking at taking a pretty deep dive into the marketplace, pedestrian connectivity in the marketplace in general. It's good in places and it's poor in places. Mm-hmm. So how can we make it better everywhere? And there are some challenges with the property owner, but if we don't ever ask, the answer is always no, right? So we've done some improvements with some bike facilities and connectivity, but that's what we want. We want people from the CU housing walking to Whole Foods, walking to Target. We want them over here. We also want to make sure that we can handle them with their vehicles and get them around safely too.
I think one of the points about going to Costco is almost everybody drives, because if you come out with a basket full of purchases, you're not going to put them on even your electric bike, unless you've got a really big electric bike.
All right.
David.
So I understand your presentation is a broad overview, but considering the public's interest in bicycling and walking trails and subsequent need for safe pedestrian crossings at arterials, are there specific strategies going to be included in the transportation plan update to address those needs?
Not specifically in the transportation plan, but yes, in the Vision Zero safety action plan. So that's the plan that focuses specifically on safety, and we have specific solutions like leading pedestrian intervals. That's when there's shortened to LPI, so you go up and you press the button, and then in a conventional traffic signal setup, the vehicle gets the green at the same time as the walk gets the green. And the LPI, leading pedestrian interval, so the pedestrian gets a period of time for their green before the vehicle gets their green. That's one solution that's being suggested for pretty much all of our intersections. We've implemented it at several. Marshall and Sycamore, Marshall and Center, and Colton, Indiana have these LPIs. So we'd like to implement those. And then, we're looking at Hawk crossings, which are like those mid-block, on Rock Creek Parkway, you have the flashing light bars. The Hawk is the next level up, where it has a pole and a mast arm that comes over, and it flashes red when the pedestrian's crossing. So we're looking at that for McCaslin, which is a much larger volume roadway than Rock Creek Parkway in Colton.
So are there barriers to planning and attempting to implement grade-separated crossings for bicycles and pedestrians?
Like underpasses?
Underpasses, overpasses, considering most of Superior's population is east of McCaslin and most of the retail is west of McCaslin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's generally funding. The last underpass project we priced out came in at $7 million, and that was to go underneath McCaslin. We applied for grant funding, didn't get it. We did get money to design the underpass, so the underpass has been designed, and we'll keep trying to get that funding, unless it's something that the town decides they want to fund internally. Those are ideal, but just very expensive.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think one of the biggest challenges is
having more pedestrian and bike access between downtown Superior and the marketplace, or, I mean, generally in the marketplace itself. It was clearly designed as a very car-centric development. And there have got to be, I'd really like to see some creative ways where just regular people would feel safe walking across, and also, or have a means of doing that without going all the way to the bike path, which, if you're on a bike, is great. But it's a lot of extra steps for a pedestrian to go from downtown Superior to, some commercial establishment in the marketplace.
Are you talking about the bike path? up
Yeah.
there With the
Right.
underpass under McCaslin?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It's challenging getting across Marshall. We used to have curb cuts right here between First and Second Avenue for people to cross, and that was deemed highly unsafe. So those got removed. We have adjusted the timing and added those LPIs for folks to cross at Sycamore here and at Center. And then, we want to add some more robust signage around. I mean, it is extra steps for that bike trail, but a lot of folks don't even know it's there, So we want to do a better job at publicizing that. We added some wayfinding signage this last year to tell people that it's there. We want to do some more communication campaigns. We're also looking at, one of the new schools of thought with wayfinding and multimodal travel is, instead of telling people the distance, you tell them the time. So, you figure out, 3.5 meters per second is generally the pace, 3.5 feet per second is generally the pace of a walking pedestrian. That's the interval we use for crosswalk crossing times. You can use that interval to calculate how long it takes to walk from, where you are to your destination. And folks are finding within the transportation planning field that they're getting better engagement with the multimodal facilities. If you say, hey, it's just a 15-minute walk, rather than 0.4 miles, what does that mean? A lot of people don't know. So, that's something we could add on to signs. You can have a time for biking. You can have a time for walking. That's something we want to look at. And between the underpass here, right by Town Hall, and the underpass on the bikeway there, it's pretty good. We just need to do a better job at telling people about it and kind of leading them towards, you should try it. It's not that bad. It's a 10-minute walk. I agree. And pedestrian connectivity through the marketplace, that's one of the big places where we have these sidewalk gaps. I mean, our last public works office was over by Wayne's. So I walked around the marketplace for years, and I'm pretty comfortable, but I can see how people are not. There's sidewalks in some places, it's parking lots in others, and you have folks that are in a big hurry. They're not necessarily from here, and they're not looking out for you. So what we'd like to do is create kind of a pedestrian connectivity plan within the marketplace and have some designated routes and make sure we construct the missing pieces, get it signed. It doesn't have to be a big overhaul of the whole area, but a little bit of attention I think would go a long way towards making people more comfortable with it. And then again, telling people it's there, right? Because I think we've done a good job at building facilities, and some of the high visibility facilities like the bikeway and the 88th Street Trail, people are using those. But maybe we haven't done the greatest job at publicizing some of these smaller trail connection projects.
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I don't have anything. We've covered everything. Thank you.
Okay. Ryan?
I don't have anything.
I have a couple of quick questions. From what you've learned so far, what do you think the priorities for the transportation plan are going to be?
As far as?
You had a list of the vision statement, and did you have any insight into what you think the main action items are going to be?
I think there's going to be a lot of multimodal focus. That's high on people's minds. Continuing to expand trail facilities and make it safer and more comfortable to walk and bike. there is a pretty keen eye towards the development to the north with the CU housing and Red Tail Ridge. So making sure that that our key corridors are timed well, specifically the interchange into Marshall Road. Currently that's a coordinated corridor with the traffic signals, moving everybody through the 3 signals at the same time. But I could see, maybe we change that up and we change it to more of a traffic responsive setup to where each intersection can read what's going on. And they talk to each other, but they're not necessarily going at the same time.
Oh, you can do that? Mm-hmm. So you get one set of traffic lights talking to the next set of traffic lights so that you can get people going through green on green instead of...
Riding the green wave.
Is that what it's called?
You're supposed to go the speed limit and you should hit all the greens.
Well, I have noticed that Broadway going through Boulder seems to have got a lot better in that respect. I mean, if I drove down 93 to the town, to Canyon or somewhere like that, those lights seem to have become a lot better synchronized. So maybe they're riding the green wave. You could go and ask them how they managed it.
Yeah.
You actually made a reference to redeveloping the parking lot spaces in Superior Marketplace. Do you have a plan around that or thoughts around that?
I haven't been too involved in that process, but I know it's been a conversation that's been going on between Brixmor, RTD, the town, City of Louisville. There was a project that came forward with Affordable Housing Authority and ultimately didn't go anywhere.
That was pre-COVID, wasn't it? Yeah. Not quite pre-COVID.
Yeah, it was 2022. It was right after the fire, and that's why it got kind of like stopped.
Okay.
But that included a lot of conversations about pedestrian and walkability throughout connecting the RTD to Target, and there was also a affordable housing that they were talking about at the same time. So they were kind of talking about 2 separate housing developments in the marketplace area at the same time. And, it wasn't the best time to have those conversations, but they did, realize the need for pedestrian and multimodal, what's the word for getting around? Connectivity throughout the marketplace, especially when they started looking at putting, residents in the marketplace. So I think that's kind of what's probably spurred. And then, having more people moving across in Louisville there.
Yeah. I think the affordable housing had about 217 units, if I recall, and the Confluence project had about 400 units. So together there were 617, which was more than Sagamore, Coal Creek Crossing, Old Town, the Wee Cottage. It was about on a par with every other building, every other residence in the neighborhood. So, I was very opposed to doing anything about that, and without an update to the comprehensive plan to figure out how all the pieces on it were going to come together. I think I'd still be opposed to it, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions for Alex? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us. I really appreciate it. And if anybody has any particular, I think if you have particular questions or observations, please send them.
This won't be the last time you see Alex as part of this process, so you'll get further updates as we go along and, again, develop the relationship between these 2 plans.
There we go.
I'll get there. I can get there.
Okay.
So I'm just going to do a quick introduction. I know you all have been really anxious to engage on this conversation tonight, so we appreciate your patience. We have a lot of information in the presentation for you. I'm just here at this point in time just to say, Nora with Cushing Terrell, who is our project manager for our private consultant developing the comprehensive plan, is going to go through most of this presentation. Some of these slides, we're going to stop on each slide and ask for feedback. Some of these slides are going to build on one another. And so, you know, if we kind of keep moving, I would say some of these, there's going to be a series of slides, and then it probably is good to pause for discussion. So we'll let Nora Bland guide you through the majority of this presentation, and then I'm going to kind of close it up. But again, there's opportunities for discussion along the way. We don't expect you to get all the way to the end and remember all of your questions, but we'll just let Nora kind of lead in terms of where to pause and when we want to keep moving. So we'll start it with that. Go ahead, Nora.
Look at the lights.
I need to watch which switch. Oh, got it.
Okay, here we go. Yes, thank you all so much for, we're really excited to get to this moment in the comprehensive planning process, and thank you all so much for your time tonight. I know there's so much information in here, so I'm gonna try to move quickly through things, but at any moment, please, you know, raise your hand and or yell at me to, Nora, please God, stop. At any point, and we can spend some more time on anything. But our agenda tonight is to look at where we are in the process, report on where we are with community outreach, talk about some key themes that we've heard so far, highlight existing conditions. It's a very long report that we won't bore you all with, but we've got some highlights to share with you tonight. Talk about some of our future land use draft ideas so far, some of the opportunity areas that still remain within the town, and then do a little bit of a workshop on preliminary vision and values. Our timeline is here. It's expanded a little bit since we first started, but all of us are pretty confident that we'll get the project completed by early 2026. Outreach process. So this has been a little bit of it's always a little bit of a moving target, and we learn from what we hear in the beginning, and so then we pivot. So we started out with the page on the Shape Superior website, and we put out an online survey, and we advertised that at the Chili Fest and the Fall Festival. And then we learned from the results of that survey that we were missing input from a couple of key demographics, which was local businesses and then renters. So then we did two separate outreach efforts with renters, doing a survey with renters, and then town staff was wonderful at coming to local businesses and doing our outreach with them. All of that really informed the effort that we did with some kind of focus group stakeholder meetings, where we focused on economic development opportunity areas, hazards and resiliency, and then sustainability. And then town staff did some committee updates with all of the committees listed there. I won't read them. We're here now updating you all and town council next week. We are going to work on putting together our speaker series, which I'll talk about later, topics to be determined, and then our open house. Some of the bigger themes that we have heard so far. This is our community survey. We had 165 respondents. People really love living here. Location, access, open space, parks and trails, character, and natural features were often mentioned. Open space, it's a huge reason why people live here. I'm sure that's no surprise. And people are pretty satisfied with the level of service when it comes to open space. Growth and development. I don't know that I have worked in a community that's not concerned with growth and development, so that's no surprise there either. Transportation priorities, I'm sure you already heard. Walking trails, planning for growth, transit service, housing. Some of the key themes here were housing for empty nesters, seniors, and affordable housing. Those are some of the areas that are a little bit weaker in the town, but housing for families, obviously, great strength. Community values, people are really engaged in this community, which is awesome and such a great value for this process that people want to be involved. Safety and sustainability are also high on the top of list of values, as well as making community-wide decisions while involving the community. Housing affordability, obviously an issue and a concern, and then a lot of people shop within Superior that live within the town, and so that's great to both, reduce your vehicle miles traveled and then contribute to your sales tax base. Like I mentioned earlier, we did a renters survey because we didn't get as much response from renters as we wanted from the larger community survey. This one actually got more responses than we got to the overall survey, but again, community character is huge. Safety, walkability, maintaining and enhancing some of the attributes that make this place such a desirable place to live. Most people intend to stay in Superior long-term, which is great. Single-family detached homes are a preference, which is, again, no surprise for the county and this general area. And then there was a little bit of an appetite for townhomes, smaller options, some of that more missing middle housing that is a potential for some of the opportunity areas. Absolutely, yeah.
Do you know how many of your respondents came from the Bell apartments, the ones at the corner of Rock Creek and Colton?
We did not sort by geographic area within the renter survey responses.
Sorry?
We did not ask for which neighborhood they lived in the survey.
Yeah, thanks. With the businesses, most businesses are viewing themselves as moderately successful, but looking for some support. Development priorities, there's such a mix of uses, especially in downtown Superior, but really looking for more improvements for pedestrians and cyclists. Some mentioned some high cost of leasing spaces. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with new build spaces, typically a higher cost of leasing. Businesses are challenged with workforce. I don't think that, again, you're unique in that. That's kind of front range wide when it comes to staffing issues. And then smaller businesses would love some support in education and resources. And then many of the businesses said that they want to be more sustainable, whether that be renewable energy, recycling, or different types of reusable containers. Lisa, I might actually let you do this.
Absolutely, yeah. So as you all know, because you all were generous in your time and some of you participated in these, we visited back in November all of the town committees. And so this really is just intended to kind of summarize the key themes that we heard from each committee. So CAPS prefer to see art in all development. They would love to see acknowledgement that art really helps build community, and they would like to see Superior as an arts destination. Historic Commission, I think they would appreciate some consideration of the relationship and impact of new development near historic sites. And then, just from a policy perspective, additional resources to preserve and communicate our historic assets. Open Space Advisory Committee, I think they really would love to explore the idea of open space as a town-wide value. how does open space impact the people of the town? They were very strong in their opinion that Town 15 be designated as open space. And then just with any development or redevelopment, consider wildlife and natural systems when planning new development. In terms of OSAC, the town is about to kick off the open space management plan. And so there is going to be some deeper dives happening over the next year in terms of how we manage our open space and some of the kind of on the ground activities around open space. So comprehensive plan, again, a little higher level. Next slide. Superior Youth Leadership Council, that was a really fun one. We put maps in front of them just to really talk about what they liked, what they didn't like, where they liked parts of town, where they felt safe. So we heard a lot about walkability, bikeability. So they would love places to gather, more restaurants, shopping, better pools, again, connectivity to the Monarch campus. And then environmental sustainability was a pretty strong theme through a lot of their comments. ACEs would love to consider environmental impacts, water, transportation improvements when we're planning new development, increasing options for walking and bicycling, as well as remembering coordination with neighboring communities. And finally, our Parks Recreation Advisory Committee, just to continue to think about places for people to gather as we continue to warm due to climate change. A strong conversation around cultural and ethnic differences when planning spaces and programming. So we're, as we're going to talk about later, our demographics are broadening. And so let's make sure we're not coming through it kind of through one lens, but to broaden that as well as more partnerships. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Lisa. I'm going to pause here for a second. We still have many, many slides to go, but I want to make sure that we don't want to touch on anything that we want to pull up a different slide for, or anything at this moment.
I sort of have just a question about this.
Sure.
Is there anything out of the engagement process, the renter survey, the survey at downtown, all the meetings that we went to, was there anything in there that you were surprised at, either positively or negatively?
I don't think so. I mean, Lisa, you're as a nearby resident and working for the town, I don't know if there was anything that surprised you.
I think I wasn't surprised, but we kept hearing housing is an issue, right? I think as planners, we think about housing and we're in housing meetings and topics all day long, but I think it's really pressing on our residents as well, just in terms of affordability. I think there's general kind of concern related to the success of our schools and what are we going to do, and that's deeply tied to housing, right? So I think the schools come up often. I think we didn't hear we don't want any development. I think it's more just if we know we have more development that's going to happen, so we just want to make sure that we're thoughtful about it. Renee, what else did you hear? You went to...
I don't know. I think that, that last statement that you said was a big one for the meetings I went to. Yes, we're going to develop. Yes, we're going to build more housing. And we want to make sure that it's the right housing and that when we go about doing it, that we consider all of these things, the, sustainability, the impact and parks and recreation and open space and trails, how do you get from the development to other places in town? All of those things were brought up by all of the committees. Like where can art go on a new development? How can we bring that community, bring a new development into our community and make them feel like they belong here? Those are all things that were like across all of the committees, I think.
See, the reason I asked the question was, I always ask questions and then tell you why later, is one part of this is to ask people what kind of community they want to live in. Mm-hmm. another part of it is what kind of community do you want to live in 5 years or 10 years? And those are sort of similar questions, but they're separate questions. And so that's why I asked, was there anything in there which sort of gave us a perspective, not as to what it is they want now, but what it is they want later. And when I looked at the pieces that we got back from engagement, I read a lot of things that we like about Superior, and keep it, right?
Yes,
And then I got some pieces, and I'm going to come back to this when we talk about population trends and what's it going to look, what is our town going to look like in 5 years, about what it is that we should be looking forward to. And so those are the things that I'm trying to tease out of the engagement that we got, but I didn't want to just focus in on those. And that's why I asked the question, was there anything in there that you just went, oh, that's interesting that you brought that up. And I didn't, and I'm not getting that from you all. And that's okay. I mean, you're the professionals, and you all predict this stuff. And so to be surprised might not necessarily be a good thing. But was there anything? That's why I asked. Is there anything in there that's surprised? But
I think that's a great question, and I think let's keep that thought kind of throughout this entire process, right? Because I think the purpose of the comprehensive plan is where are we going and right?
Going?
Yeah, like you have to look backwards to understand what you've done and who you are. Yeah. But I think the ultimate goal is to look forward. So I think that's a great lens to keep.
Yes,
Okay.
agreed. And
that was my question.
I would also add to that like I feel like reading through so many comments and so many ideas and all of the engagement we've done thus far, it seems like overwhelmingly pretty positive. Like folks love living here. They love the direction that it's going. Obviously, there's fear of change. That's a human nature. Like that's how we have been built. But
they love it here. They wanted to stay here. They wanted to keep the kind of character, and they want to continue to live here.
Exactly. Yeah.
The renters would love to buy housing. The older people, we're going to see. I think you're going to tell us. The older people want to stay here. I mean, yes. I live in a community, albeit my particular community, albeit people who have wealth, but they have, all of them bought there because they wanted to be near their grandchildren.
Yeah.
And that tells me something about people that will come to Superior even as it changes in the demographics. And so we'll see.
Wow.
But
what a wonderful segue. Thank you
that's
so
why
much.
well, I asked you the question then.
Thank you. Yep. So we're looking at a pretty stable population through the 20th century, and then 1990 to 2000, that's that jump in increase, growing to over 9,000 residents. Big part of that was Rock Creek Ranch. Declined, obviously, because of the Marshall Fire, and then about 68% of rebuild as of the end of last year from that. And then future population growth, really limited. You're going to hear that theme throughout tonight. There's only so many areas that the town can grow in. So looking at a potential population of 16,000 following the completion of housing developments.
And we're currently at 13,000?
We're We're pushing 13 at this point. It's hard, everything's always retroactive, right? So we're adding more housing units, so we're always playing catch up on that. And that 16,000 people, that's just what we estimate based on what's approved today, right? So I think our ultimate build-out population will be higher than that, if we look at additional housing development on some of these properties.
Well, that was a question I was
Yeah.
going to ask, and so as long as you raised it, and I hate to jump in on this, but, so the 16,000 is based upon the
remainder of
completion
downtown.
of the
yeah.
already approved housing units.
Yes.
That largely are almost completely.
Downtown,
Downtown Superior.
kind of the capacity that remains in original town, and then, a little bit. And then for the remaining build-out, we used a slightly smaller average household size, recognizing most of those units, I think, on average, are a little smaller. So I think we use, our average household size, I think, is like 2.8. I think for that, we use maybe like a 2.6 for the rest of those units, just reflecting generally they're smaller. Yes.
Got it.
So this doesn't, so this doesn't include Zaharias or
Nope.
whatever might happen with
Correct.
Town 15 or any of those.
Correct.
kinds.
And is there any, even trying to phrase this, is there any thought in that 16,000? And the answer is probably no, but is there any thought on how ADUs are going to?
No, we
affect that
haven't.
number?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we would be shocked if we had probably more than 20 ADU permits on an annual basis. I think the first year we might see a surge, but I think, I had lunch with a director in Nevada, and their entire community allows ADUs, and she had 6 permits last year, right? So I don't think we're going to see dramatic population increase as a result
I mean,
of
we spent
that.
a lot of time dealing with the ADU issue.
And we're going
then-
to
and
next
I'm-
time.
And I'm saying to
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
okay, if ADUs are restricted to single-family homes, which they are, lots with single-family
Mm-hmm.
homes, how many single-family homes are there in the town of Superior? And of those, how many do we expect are going to be ADUs or requests over the next 10 years? And I think you've already answered the question.
I don't
and
think
that
we
is if
expect a surge.
You'd be surprised if there were 20 a year.
Based on all the communities that allow them today, that are peer communities, again, I think we might see a surge the first year or two, maybe basement conversions in Rock Creek, but I don't expect, and I think that's,
But if I translate those into numbers,
Yeah.
again, this is how I'm looking at it. I'm looking through a different lens. And that is, okay, if over the next 10 years, there
Yeah.
were 200 ADUs.
Sure.
At 2.6 people per ADU, we're talking about,
And I don't know that you'd get
500
2.6
people.
on an average. I think you might get like 1.8 average household size, yeah. 500
Less than
people?
300 people.
300, yeah.
so in terms of affecting the
Yeah.
population, when I see that number of 16,000, and I'm sort of jumping ahead, I apologize for that. When I see that number of 16,000, that is, and if there's no other housing developed on the opportunity zones that have already been located, that's what we're going to be looking at in terms of population over the next 10 years.
Yes, and in terms of jumping ahead, this is a really big point for you all and us to help guide us through this process, because when we talk about our opportunity sites, we have some initial ideas of if residential will be a part of those sites. And then once we get guidance from you all and the town council, we'll be able to update the numbers to better understand, and also along with the water infrastructure report
Yeah.
and availability, like all of it is so interdependent that like we're at just like a point of updating you all of where we are right now, and then this will continue to evolve.
And we have water capacity that exceeds this.
Yes.
So we do, I mean, so we're not capped at this 16 in terms of water. There's also additional capacity in the roadway, but again, to Nora's point, that's why we're looking at all this together, right? So that we can make sure all of these plans and policies align.
And again, I know you're going to talk about it, but the growth in the number of people who are older
Yep.
going in the community is also another factor about how we're dealing with this, which is why I raised the issue about in the transportation study, and that, and that is that if people are getting older, but they're still living in Superior, they're going to be looking for different kinds of ways to get around.
And different housing types. Thank you again for a wonderful segue. We're looking at,
Yep.
I went on that one and I didn't go on this one. We're looking at majority of married households, but the fastest growing age cohort is those 55 and older. And then again, young families, this is all pointing to young families in Superior. Average household size of 2.8 has remained relatively stable. Really, we're looking to understand the barriers to those in the community that are aging and what support and programming they're going to need, and then continuing to provide services that support families at various life stages, and then understanding future demands of the demographic changes on public and institutional facilities and programs. In terms of racial demographic, mostly white, but with a pretty fast-growing Asian population, 13% from 2012. It is pretty unique to Superior, so what we want to learn from that is exploring the unique needs and benefits of the growing Asian population. And then there was a preference of the Asian population from the community survey to inclusivity and engagement with those folks. So looking for opportunities to engage more of that population. For land use, as you know, predominantly built out with only about 3% or 80 acres of vacant land. The biggest portion of the land area within the town is parks and open space. Again, coming back to that community value. There's almost 30% of the town that's within residential uses, most of that being single-family detached. I don't think that's anything uncommon for a town of Superior size and location. And then retail is mostly Superior Marketplace in Rock Creek. They now have a kind of a mix of ownership, and so that's a little bit different from when they first developed, where it was all one ownership. So this can be a little bit complicated when it comes to redevelopment opportunities. And then again, looking at infill opportunities, looking at those underperforming sites and parking areas. And then I don't think we're going to see a lot of whole-scale redevelopment in Superior within the next 10 years at least. And then land use policy should really support the different character of the commercial areas and their unique opportunities and challenges. For housing, about 1/3 of residents or households in Superior are cost burdened. That means that they are paying more than 30% of their income on housing. Housing options
How does that compare? Is that a big number?
in terms of like from the Front Range, competing with Denver Metro, it's lower, but it's not low. It's, I think there's
Compared to Boulder?
it's lower than Boulder.
Lower than Boulder?
Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody's lower than Boulder.
Yep.
Yeah. But the housing options don't necessarily meet what the needs are of the town. There's a lot of larger, like more bedrooms per household homes that don't necessarily meet what the workers or all residents need. Rents have grown by 56% since 2012, which is actually higher than the county, not the city of Boulder, but, and then there's no technically deed restricted affordable housing as of right now within Superior. Seniors, again, a growing demographic. And then there's not a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing, which technically means it's older housing, and there's not a ton of that here, particularly since the Marshall Fire. So looking forward, new housing should try to diversify the types and price points of housing, affordable and attainable housing, which we know you all have gotten a wonderful grant, and that's great news. Missing middle housing, you'll hear that term in every comprehensive plan meeting you've ever attended. And then unique needs and perspectives of renters should definitely be considered. Okay, we've got quite a few economic development slides, so I'm going to ask that we go through all of these before we make comments. So apologies in advance. So commercial development is really concentrated in the marketplace, little pieces of Rock Creek Village, and then downtown. Most of it was built in the 2000s, smaller developments in the 2010s and 2020s. Local economic developments are obviously impacted by adjacent jurisdictions and markets, and then there is impact from the COVID-19 pandemic on office market, mostly on development of new office. Jobs and workforce, this community has a higher rate of formal educational attainment, 75% having a college degree. It's primarily an out commuting community, over twice as many workers commuting out of the town than those working within, which is that graphic there. Largest employment sector is retail, which is staffed primarily by those who commute into the town rather than residents. So retail workers typically make about $14,000 annually. I think everybody can agree that that's not really attainable to live in this town with. So thinking about opportunities to let folks live and work within the town moving forward. The existing retail centers of the town are so important, and we want to make sure that they continue to succeed and also differentiate from each other, and they're not duplicative. Again, Superior is not an island. Everything outside impacts it. And yeah, exactly. Louisville and Broomfield are making some big moves. And so we need to consider those when we move forward with recommendations for the economy. So non-residential development prospects as we look forward, I'd like to preface this with that I'm not an economist. We do have an economic development consultant on this project. So these slides came from him and I am relaying them, and I will happily take notes on any questions that you have and relay them if I don't know the answer myself. But these are generally good candidates for Superior, looking forward based on market conditions and the land uses that you have available. Retail, daily commodity needs, specialty or shopping goods, those more fast food restaurants, cafes, diners, fast casual, and full service. And then entertainment, we've seen this a lot in many communities that we work with. Entertainment or the interactive kind of retail, experiential retail. Office, small to mid-scale corporate office, and then kind of that shared working space along with medical office. Lodging, an upscale national chain or a boutique hotel are most likely to succeed in Superior. And then other areas, life sciences, light industrial, healthcare clinic, and then private educational. Retail, municipalities in Boulder County are a lot more separated and spread out. This can feel a little bit more like an island, but that can mean more captive audiences, but it can also make it more difficult for individual stores to pull in from exterior markets. It's less pronounced for the big boxes as you might think. They're able to expand their reaches, but it's all subject to major market competition. And then retail prospects as it comes to commodity and daily needs. The Safeway in Superior is really strong performing. And then there's also other options. You've got Whole Foods, Target, and Costco. And then in neighboring cities, you've got every other brand that you would potentially need to go to. And then pharmacy and drugstore, CVS is really pretty well covering. In terms of grocery and superstores, most of the folks that are visiting Safeway are those that live within Superior. So that one's covering at least that area of town. Trade areas are really, it's like 70% of store visits are within this area. So that's what these blobby maps look like. At the bottom here, Superior Marketplace is really reaching, whereas that Safeway, like I mentioned earlier, is really serving local residents. So looking ahead, what kind of outside retail we could maybe expect based on the conditions here. We're not going to see another really large scale grocer in Safeway, but something like a Trader Joe's or a Natural Grocers is potentially on the market. And then Jolly Pets is apparently supplying the things for PetSmart. So that's something that could be considered.
Jolly Pets, I'm not.
I hadn't heard of it either, and I am not available for questions on that one. Dining and entertainment, obviously you all have put so much into the placemaking of downtown Superior. So that's really supportive of dining and drinking and parking once and exploring and all of that good stuff that you want in your community. And then Colton Road is a great quick service, drive-through and grocery opportunity. And potentially more considering the Resolute site. And then the Blue Sports Stable, great template for maybe additional uses that are similar to that one, to expand that and make Superior a bit of a destination for those types of retail and uses. Office, it's quiet. That's what you're going to hear everywhere. Besides those, downtown markets, it could be favorable. It's got really good visibility, especially, in proximity to Boulder, really educated workforce. But it's really about those developers that are unwilling to put the investment into future office uses. And then growth for jobs in the office sector, it's great, it looks great, but again, it's really dependent on investors with several deep pockets to invest in that. Medical clinics, life sciences, really here you're just trying to compete with your neighbors. So it is it's a main driver of office space in general, but with Red Tail Ridge and other investments in Boulder County and Louisville, you would probably want to be, oh, yes.
What is Red Tail Ridge?
It's, oh,
I mean, I know where it is, but I don't know if it's changed since the last time I.
The zoning on the property currently is set for kind of a mix of commercial and light industrial uses. They're, through their comprehensive plan, right, they're doing the same thing we are, and so their comprehensive plan is indicating probably maybe allowances for residential, things like that.
So it would be residential.
Yeah. And also, I think any redevelopment of the Avista site, if Avista Hospital is, you know, they've indicated publicly that they don't intend to remain where they are. So redevelopment of the Avista site on the Louisville side is something they're talking, you know, kind of what future land use is there as well.
I mean, that's been through Louisville's town council.
Yeah, I mean, the
times.
zoning is set, but again, through the comprehensive plan, they're revisiting potential land use changes, which then could amend the PD for them, which, but yeah, because nothing's actually built out there yet.
Yep. Yeah, so I guess looking at future kind of medical office, life sciences spaces, just trying to cater to what the market wants and what potential users would want and how they would build it in Superior. Lodging, really looking at corporate chain or upscale lodging, as I mentioned before, South Superior and adjacent to kind of the hotel mini cluster. Recent completions and proposed pipeline developments have been in the city of Boulder and largely in response to Google. And for the downtown area core, it's really just a boutique option as it looks in the future. But there is, you know, interest in the Element site despite its challenges. Other niche land use categories that could be viable are like educational satellite campuses or offices, vet clinics, condo, garage / workshops. I think they've also been called man caves, but kind of that like individually owned or leased spaces that are just, you can do whatever you need in them, whether that's woodworking or, you know, putting together skis or something. That's a kind of a creative land use that provides a little bit more of a light industrial opportunity. And then assisted living. And then some of them, we'll get into this later, but when we talk about our opportunity areas, there is some opportunity for some creative mixed-use sites. Sustainability, we've got most of our emissions coming from buildings with trailing right behind transportation. Energy, 37% from gas, 25% from coal, and 31% from wind, and then 5% from solar. But you all are doing great with your municipal facilities, receiving 100% from on-site solar and Renewable Connect. The beneficial electrification plan and 1, 2, 3 electrify campaigns both support electrification and decarbonization. Highly valued open space system, as I mentioned before. Town utilizes its water reuse system, turf removal, and drip irrigation on public lands as it comes to water conservation, and then yard waste facility and curbside compost are available. And then implications, I think staff and leadership is committed to continuing to search for opportunities to incentivize electrification, remaining up to date in the energy code, and then protection of wildlife habitat corridors, removal of turf grass, planting pollinator-friendly and native plants, and looking for opportunities for green infrastructure and stormwater management. For resilience, there have been, as you know, several major events since the last comprehensive plan, the 2013 floods, COVID, and then the Marshall Fire. And then really the town has tried to increase efforts and awareness for, as it relates to resiliency and the creation of the Disaster Recovery and Resiliency Division. And then ongoing recovery from Marshall Fire, as you know. Really, all policies should be considered in a lens of resiliency as it relates to the natural environment, land management, town utilities, infrastructure, public health, education, housing, communications, and the overall economy. So evacuation and emergency response in transportation planning and partnerships should be considered, and then an ongoing effort for public awareness and education as it comes to how to prepare residents for their own safety. We're getting really close to the end of this section. Apologies. Parks, recreation, and open space. It's pretty amazing that nearly 40% of the town's land area is parks and open space. That doesn't even include privately owned open space within the HOAs. 22 parks, and then 39 miles of trails for bicycle and pedestrian access. Town exceeds national averages for the amount of parks and open space. And then implications, land management practices, again, impact the resiliency of the community. So hazard mitigation should really be a part of these conversations moving forward. And then new parks or amenities should consider the really where they're needed in the town as a whole. And then programming and events should continue to evolve and change as the demographics of the community do. I think this is the last one of existing conditions. There's still much more to come, but the town maintains its own, obviously, water and wastewater systems. The Boulder County Sheriff provides public safety. I don't think I really need to go through these. These all seem very apparent to you all, but there's enough water supply to meet projected build out, but we should really continue to plan for future growth as we go through this process. And then really the town benefits from contracting with the emergency and public safety services of the larger districts. So continuing to work into those agreements should be highly considered. Okay, that's the end of existing conditions. Anything to add?
That was a lot of information.
Yeah, I'm
Anything
sorry.
that you think kind of really it's the implications, I think, right? Like the data is one thing, but we were beginning to try and think about what this means moving forward. So just to pause here before we jump to the opportunity areas, any observations or thoughts on this?
Yes, questions.
Yep.
So are there any inclinations, not conclusion, because we're not at the
Nope,
conclusion
no
stage.
conclusions, yep.
Are there any inclinations based upon the study so far about infrastructure that needs to support the community over the next 10 years and what those possibilities or might be. Example, the Boulder County Sheriff is doing a great job, but is there something that we think over the next 10 years may impact their ability to continue to do the great job? We use the Mountain View Fire and Rescue Department. Is there something over the next 10 years that we think do we need another fire station? If we stay with, those are the kinds of things that I'm I'm focusing in on based upon the section that you just did. A lot of the stuff about the business side and what would be helpful in creating a tax base and all that they're very helpful, but I think it's beyond at least the planning committee in some way, unless we get into redevelopment, that.
Those are good questions. And so I think when we get to the point of making recommendations for changes to land use, we'll send the comprehensive plan to them. So, for now, they don't really have anything to react to in terms of level of change. So I think when we start to understand the things that are potentially changing, we'll confirm with them through that. I haven't heard to date, we haven't heard any giant red flags from any of these organizations like, whoa, we're getting close, guys. So I don't think we've had any sense from that.
I'm not even focusing in just on land use.
Sure.
I'm looking at it in terms of, if the population does increase to the point where we think it's going to be, what kind of services will we need to provide, and do we have the capability of ramping up to that? That's, again, a question for you all to think about over the next couple of months.
There's also, Mountain View Fire and the Boulder County Sheriff's Office also do, visioning and master plan for their service areas. So, there's something to be said about looking, I'm not sure, I think Mountain View Fire's done some work recently.
Well, just to
like you're saying,
just to give an example, we have one firehouse. And they do a great job. I love that they're around the corner from my house. But do we need another one? Now, that may dovetail into what they see their needs are over the course of their, the next couple of years. But is response time enough? Those are the kinds of questions that
Those are great.
Ask.
We did
and
the state.
I'm not looking for answers. I'm just raising issues.
No, I think those are good. And we did the stakeholder group with Mountain View Fire, Boulder County Sheriff, and our emergency management teams, and just kind of asked, what are the issues you think of today? And, really, I think they're pretty well resourced. We did, have a meeting with BVSD, right? Because I think, again, what is happening with our school enrollment decline? What types of policies can we think about in our comprehensive plan that continue to support BVSD? So I think, what we heard generally, and they will review our comprehensive plan, I think in terms of land use changes to understand, potential changes that the schools might experience. But I don't think they're surprised at our enrollment. I think some of it is just some preference that people are seeing. But I think we're really a typical, without starting to turn over some of these homes to younger families. But also, I don't think we're atypical in what we're experiencing here. So I think we're pretty predictable.
Certainly not in this area. I mean, if the population is aging, then so are the children. And regrettably, as property values and sales prices continue in the direction they're going, young people are not going to be able to afford to move into the area, into a 4-bedroom house that we've just predicted.
Or even have children.
Or even have children.
That's a true concern.
But your point,
that is a very important thing.
Your point is well taken, and we won't forget the impacts to
and,
infrastructure.
And to focus in on the school things, if school population decreases, what are we going to do with school locations as a superior community, because if they, ultimately, if a school closes, which is possible, then we'll be visiting the issue of what to do with that piece of land.
Ryan?
Yeah, looking at, our 40% of our town's land is parks and open space. One of the slides said, looking into more shade structures. Is that especially when that's calling out, has the discussion been around, are those natural structures? Is it more trees, or is it more things you would see in a walking through park, those canopy shades?
I think that's a good question. And I also think for the purposes of the comprehensive plan, we probably would just put in some kind of broad overarching policies. And
Okay.
then the specific amenities that should go in each specific park would probably handle more through park planning efforts and through that committee. So I don't think through the lens of the comprehensive plan, we have to start worrying about
Okay.
specific improvements, but just general policies.
So that actually answered my question in
Yeah.
a better way, because ultimately my question was going to be, how far does this plan at the end delivery, is it going to say, well, residents love trees, but we're sustainable, so we're not going to do the water thing, we're going to do the shade thing? To what level is that going to do it, and then leave it to the smaller bodies, I guess, is more the direction I'm looking from you.
Yeah, I think that's the layers of plans that we have as a town, right? Comprehensive plan, certainly sets land use, but it's not going to say at Purple Park, we need to add 14 benches and 3 shade structures. It's going to say, additional amenities may be desired in some of our parks, and then we leave it to those plans to get into the details.
Right, so we are saying we want more shade in some of these open space and park, open space and park areas. And then the master plan for open space and parks will talk about what types of amenities go and what types of open space or parks. Like if you have a natural open space area that's zoned open space natural, and that there's certain amenities that are allowed there and there's certain amenities that aren't allowed there. So the master plan for the parks and open space looks specifically and details what types of amenities could go in those areas.
Okay.
And that's how you would determine what type of shade structure or how you would even go about getting shade in open space. I'm not sure. If it's natural open space, there might not ever be shade unless you're down by the creek or something like that, because it's not a natural, there's no way to get the trees to grow in the middle of, Boulder County open space naturally.
Great, thank you.
Steve?
Nothing specific. I think I'm good.
Okay. Amanda?
I think I'm good.
Anne?
I have a question about your population projections and average household size, given that the birth rate is going down so significantly. Is that factored into your projections?
We didn't do a population projection as part of that scope. And I think as we move forward, if the town is, if you all would and we'll have to do some sort of estimating, but then we really will have to look more at the work that the Colorado State Demographer does. And I know they have work really at the county level in terms of what's projected, but it's really hard to drill down with the data at the local level. So the State Demography Office, and I think we can share the presentation with you that they did recently regarding Boulder County overall kind of population projections and changes, if you're interested.
It was a great presentation.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that, we can share that with you.
I got the slides.
Yeah. It was a great presentation.
But
And a total
yeah.
eye-opener for me.
Yeah, we'll think about it on a big picture level, but it's
Yeah.
really hard to do kind of,
But that's
very dialed in projections.
the 16,000 population projection is
It doesn't include assume a change. It's really based on kind of current conditions today with the household sizes we have. If we built out kind of, again, lower household sizes for the new units, but no, we haven't gotten to the point where we're going to start factoring that in.
Thank you.
David?
No questions.
Okay. I have a curiosity question. I think one of your slides said that the town is short on some amenities that we'd normally have.
Yep, right, the last sentence on the left.
Yes. And
So
Not meet national, what don't we meet national standards?
it's all embedded in the Prost plan. I'd have to pull it up. I think for certain types of maybe basketball courts or tennis courts, there's national averages and standards for towns of a certain size. It's in the Prost plan.
Sorry, it's in which plan?
The Parks, Recreation,
Recreation.
Open Space and Trails Plan.
The existing one or the one that
Yes,
they're working?
the existing one.
Oh, okay.
yeah, and
Bathrooms.
and those standards are they're pretty general. Like if that amenity is available in a neighboring community, it's usually it's a lot less of a. It's not necessarily a burden for.
Well, the one we hear about quite often is a recreation.
Oh yes, we hear that too. We've heard it many a time.
I wondered if you were referring to that.
We'll talk about Town 15 soon.
Okay, fine. Please carry on. Oh, sorry.
Yep, good.
Great. So-
Just want to make a real quick point before Nora dives into all of this. Everything that you're going to talk about on this next coming slides, and I'm sure she's going to say this too, we just kind of want to run this by you before we take it to the town council. We're going to run it by them before we take it out for extensive public outreach and engagement. So these land use, nothing you are doing tonight is deciding any of these. These are just the direction that staff is going to lead with. So just want to make sure for anybody out there listening, as well as for you all, we just kind of want to run these by you. We can talk about all of them. You can potentially change or add things, but this is not set in stone at all.
Yes, this is an iterative process. So just as a reminder, I'm sure you all are familiar with what future land use is, and you all have gotten a lot of use out of your current future land use map. But what it is, it's really just a tool to illustrate the community's vision for how they do or do not want to grow. It's guidance for staff and you all for land use applications and decision-making. It's informed by the public history and landowners, and it is amendable. It is not regulatory, it's not zoning. It does help inform updates to the zoning ordinance. It's not a plan for development, and it's also not new. As you all know, you've had your 2012 comprehensive plan, future land use map,
So
and
what's it, FLL?
future land use map. It's a fun little acronym soup that planners
All right.
just love to use. Okay, so we have our future, our opportunity areas that really, these are just carried forward from the 2012 plan, but also they've been reduced from 2012 because some of those properties have been developed. So we've got 76th Street annexation and the Guardian property, Superior Marketplace, original town commercial, downtown Superior, Discovery Office Park, Zaharias, Resolute, and then Town 15. And then we will also be including policies kind of town-wide for redevelopment areas. Starting with 76th Street annexation and the Guardian property, we are at the northwest corner of town here. Some of the site factors, it's got access to transit. There's a perception of limited vehicular access. The rear of Superior Marketplace is potentially lacking a sense of place. It has really great potential for views and access to open space, but then potential conflicts with existing uses with the residential to the south. So the previous future land use designation from the 2012 plan was light industrial, And what we all, I guess I should probably back up a second. We had a future land use workshop where we all got together in here and ate a bunch of pastries and talked about these opportunity areas, and we got together town staff, and yeah, do you want to list off everyone?
Yeah, so we did a workshop with town manager, economic development, planning, parks, public works, resiliency, sustainability, just kind of representatives from all divisions of the town. And that's kind of what created this initial version of recommendations for you all to think about.
Yeah, and I guess next steps for us after your input and then input from the council is to go to the public with these ideas and really test them out and see what sticks. So thoughts from the workshop were potentially light industrial continuing on from the 2012 plan, or kind of medium or high density residential, considering its proximity to the marketplace and its access and things like that.
Would this also have the potential to be like affordable housing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anywhere where we see housing on here, it wouldn't preclude affordable housing. And in fact, our code would require at least some % of it to be affordable housing under our inclusionary housing ordinance.
I mean, what's the difference between the grid and the solid purple or mauve?
So the solid purple is what the existing land use is. And then,
I mean, that's where Guardian Storage is part of it. What's up at the north, where it adjoins Marshall
That's the
Drive?
CDOT property, that
Sorry?
purple up on the top.
Yeah,
That's the CDOT site. So if you remember, there's that CDOT maintenance yard right at the corner of Marshall Road and 76th Street.
is it still there?
Yes. And they don't intend to go anywhere.
yeah, there's no change in use envisioned for CDOT on that property.
There's a cell tower on that property, and
Okay.
Not the best neighbors.
I think any policy that we would write for this could accommodate redevelopment of the CDOT site if and when that happens. But I think for now,
So it's the sort of gridded area that's going to be annexed?
yeah, those are all the parcels that potentially, they would all need to be annexed, but that's kind of the area in which the town has always generally assumed when they develop, they'll get annexed and would be part of the town.
I think at one stage it was considered for public works maintenance area, wasn't it?
Possibly. Public Works is developing a plan to build an operations and maintenance facility down at the Honey Creek site where the wastewater treatment plant is. So they just got approval of a design build contract to put a facility down there.
Okay.
That way, wherever, yeah,
South.
that way.
This was also the area that when we spoke to the landowners, they were potentially interested in the man cave concept of like.
Yeah, that's the Guardian people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the where small scale storage, light industrial type of use.
I mean, would Guardian like to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Which would that fit under current?
What's that?
That fit with an adjacent light industrial
Yep.
use?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that would fall under that. Yep.
And it's pretty unique that like it could be pretty coveted in the area. There's not a lot of that offered.
Okay.
No, if you try and rent a garage, you have to go out to Fort Lupton or somewhere like that, actually. Yeah.
Yep.
Any concerns with taking this one forward?
Nope.
Okay.
All right. Superior Marketplace, great transit access, internally divided by Marshall. It is overparked, great visibility, strong performing existing commercial uses. A real focus here would be to keep it distinct from downtown, which I really don't think would be an issue based on the urban form that it has as of now. And then looking at infill in underperforming areas, and then potentially introducing residential. In speaking with the developers here, I mean, they are interested in making it a more pedestrian-friendly environment. I don't know that they are currently interested in developing residential uses. That said, if a potential partner came around and wanted to make that happen, I don't think that they would close the door to that.
But this would require a land use change from commercial to mixed use.
We'd have to amend the PD, but the first step would be to get the policy in place through the comprehensive plan.
The idea behind mixed use is that it could be residential, it could be commercial, it could be retail, like office, any type of commercial or residential use would work,
But that-
including office.
But it's currently commercial,
Yes.
No, it has a PD,
and it has a PD.
which allows residential, but only on top of the existing.
The PD does not allow residential.
But does it, the existing PD would permit retail,
Yes.
commercial, anything on your list except residential?
I thought under the PD you could put residential on top of the stores.
No, that would be a change in use. There's the residential, there's verbiage on there about residential uses, but it's,
I'm going to suggest that you may find pushback on this one, from changing it from commercial to anything that would allow residential. I'm just going to make a suggestion that I expect pushback.
which is the impetus behind this is, you're right. Absolutely, you're right. But we don't want to remove existing commercial, especially being that it's actually performing well right now, and there's not a ton of vacancy in the marketplace as a whole. But it would really look at how do we infill the marketplace and add people to ensure future, like, prosperity in
Yeah.
the marketplace?
And the answer to that question, one might suggest, is more commercial.
Possibly.
You don't need parking lots the size of the ones that are there. One could build in the middle of it, to the extent that the owner might be interested, in building a freestander, or another strip of, without necessarily, I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think any current.
Because when this came up the last time, the issue, there was a lot of public outcry about adding residential or taking over buildings that were being vacated and making them into residential, even by knocking them down. And I'm not saying anything more than
Yeah, I mean, I think.
as you move forward, I think you're going to get pushback.
I think that's frankly one of the primary reasons why we decided to pair the transportation plan with the comprehensive plan, right? So that we can evaluate, because I know some of this concern is coming in form of, what will this mean for traffic on Marshall and McCaslin? And so that was really, it was actually the primary reason why we coupled these two projects together, so that we can evaluate these in tandem at the same time. I think when we think about state land use policy, when we think about the forces that are, happening outside of Superior, I think considering residential in this area should be something that we strongly evaluate. I think it's close to transit. I think we have to have the conversation as a community. And if it gets pulled out after, robust dialogue from you all in the town council, that's okay. But
I'm not.
We expect it to be controversial. If you're warning us, we know.
But to the extent, let me just.
Yeah.
give you the other side of it, and that is to the extent that there may be some interest in taking a piece of this Superior Marketplace opportunity area and turning it into affordable housing close to transit, that would require a land use change and B, a change to the PUD.
Correct.
And
So
so I'm just,
the comprehensive plan is where we look at, like, what is the, if someone came in and said, we'd like to put residential affordable housing next to RTD, right now the comprehensive plan doesn't contemplate that. If the comprehensive plan contemplates the potential for residential in this area, then we would examine that farther. Without it in the comprehensive plan, it makes it a larger barrier to someone who's interested to come in and do that. So that's why we're starting here, I guess.
I hear what you're saying, and I'll take your word for it.
Sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
I just think that like clumping this is like one blanket. I think if you give people an opportunity to say, hey, we're looking at some mixed use here, and where would you want it to be? Because I think a lot of the pushback last time is that they wanted to do it right where PetSmart and stuff is, which is like right next to other, and I think there was, and that was like going to be the wealthy and very high and all this stuff. And so it all got shut down. Where if we were more delicate and more said like, oh, if we were to consider mixed use, where would you want it? And
I think that's a good point, because I think you're right. I think there's a lot of nuances kind of into what this can look like. And I think we, as a town, as you all know, we are heavily dependent on the success of this center for our financial stability, right? And I think one of the primary goals of looking at this area is how do we keep this viable and thriving for the next 20 years, right? Because the life of this, and whatever policy we do can't say Target and Costco should go away, right? So it has to be kind of surgical in terms of where and how.
And, you know, we don't have to look far down Colton to see another area of commercial that has now turned into mixed use. Which will literally save the rest of that Flatirons Mall. Otherwise, it would have been, you know, a dead space.
I would also argue if there were probably the market for more retail, there was nothing preventing more retail from coming in.
Right.
But we did just get Barnes and Noble, which was kind of nice.
I just mean additional buildings, right? Like if,
But again, you know, all I'm saying is, based upon the pushback we got before, expect that you're going to hear more about this from others.
We are ready to engage.
I know.
Okay.
Okay, next.
David, no, hang on.
Oh.
Anybody else have any, want to make, I have a couple of comments on this, but does anybody else want to comment on this marketplace thing? I mean, I actually think this is the most critical piece of, from my perspective, this is the most critical piece of the updating the comprehensive plan. And I'd like to figure out how to be more involved in it, actually. I mean, the Planning Commission was really quite involved in the Northwest Subarea Plan, which is actually sort of, I don't know, are you using any of it as a basis for the questions you're asking or things like that? I mean, it would be nice to have some opportunity, I mean, maybe outside just tonight, to be involved in, I mean, it's clear that transportation and land use are completely mixed in this. I mean, you can't solve one without solving the other. And I mean, this is kind of where I see our contribution being, if you like, in doing things like this. So, I mean, if there's a way of participating in this productively or constructively, that would be helpful. I mean, there was a lot of controversy about the earlier developments, but if you go back to the Northwest Area Plan itself, it proposed residential by where the bus station is now. I'm not even sure the bus station was there at the time, was it? Maybe it was,
Yeah.
but it was on a much smaller, I mean, it was a much smaller scale than the plans that eventually came forward with sort of 70-foot high buildings and 0.1 to 0.3 parking arrangements. So, I mean, revisiting it makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure starting from scratch makes a whole lot of sense since you got all that data the last time around.
I have one quick question. What percentage of the land that could be developed is in this marketplace? I mean, this must be the largest, is it the largest parcel?
So you mean of the 80 acres?
Yeah.
We didn't include the 80 acres that's vacant land. So
Okay.
we didn't factor in, and just ironically, this whole shopping center is approximately 80 acres. So when you're thinking about the vacant land in town, think of this site collectively, but they're dispersed. But we haven't added that in. And again, to, I think, Commissioner Harper's point, you know, we've done the Northwest Superior Area Plan. I think right now we're just kind of in a high level. Are we interested in introducing residential to this area? To be clear, the comprehensive plan, we don't have the budget nor the scope to do the deep dive that we did through the Northwest Area Plan. But I think as a result, and I agree with you, this is really important for the town. I think as a result, after the comprehensive plan, you know, we could kind of begin to take more of that, you know, really deep dive into this area again. But I think for now, we're going to look at transportation. We're going to look at, you know, where within here it makes sense. But I don't think we're going to see, you know, the extensive type work that we did with the Northwest Area Plan as part of the comprehensive plan, just to be.
I mean, I guess my
Transparent.
concern about this would be everybody will want to know what the details are before anybody is willing to vote for anything.
Maybe. And again, I think that's the iterative process of what we're, you know, kind of. I think when we think about the comprehensive plan, we can begin to talk about potentially number of units, you know, potentially locations within here it could fit, and some policies around height. I think we can, you know, certainly set those types of policies at the comprehensive plan level.
So my question is a hotel a commercial use or a residential use?
Commercial.
Hint. To me, that's what this property should have.
I would say we're getting a lot of pressure from the state to look at transit-oriented development, which is residential.
Yep,
Specifically on this site.
especially, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
Look at what's going across the highway.
absolutely.
Yep, I got it.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Original town commercial, we're looking at Marshall and McCaslin here. Access and visibility from both of those roads, compatibility with original town, and then adjacency to both downtown Superior and the marketplace. Opportunity to really connect those major retail centers. So in 2012, the idea was commercial, and then it is vacant, or no, it has one commercial use.
Yep,
The gas
Yep.
station, and then the
The
rest
gas
are vacant.
Gas
Yep.
station.
And then, so looking at kind of further neighborhood commercial uses here.
Is neighborhood commercial versus commercial?
Great question. It's smaller scale. You're not looking at necessarily another gas station or a kind of big box. It's more something that would serve the neighborhood, something that people could walk to, like a coffee shop, or maybe a small retail kind of boutique establishment.
But this wouldn't include residential in this.
no.
No,
Okay.
since it's off of such a major intersection.
What was the proposal that we did get for the lot behind the gas station? Somebody brought a project to us.
Was that just a concept plan? Or was that a formal application?
Just the concept plan.
It was for an office building of some kind?
Was it the pet in the office?
No.
No. Was there?
Those little mini houses.
Yeah,
Well, he's done a neighborhood meeting. I don't know that did he do we'll have to, we'll follow up with you on that.
Yeah.
I think that any and all of those uses would fit under neighborhood commercial. If it was like a vet clinic or like small scale office, small
not-
scale.
Not residential, this would neighborhood commercial preclude residential use?
I think we'll have to look at that through the engagement.
It's not really an obviously commercial place because you've got the marketplace right across Marshall. It's next to Asty Park. It's behind the gas station.
I think what's interesting about this is the south property on First and Coal Creek is zoned commercial now on the west side and the east side, right? So we have properties with existing zoning as commercial. And I think that's, through this process, we could say, actually, you know what, once you get west of First, this should be residential. This shouldn't be commercial, right? So I think
It used to be residential before the fire because there were houses on it.
well, it was built as residential, but it was actually zoned commercial.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah,
there
so-
were houses on it.
Yeah. So I think that's exactly the point of this, right? So I think where do we transition from commercial or potentially commercial fronting McCaslin into the neighborhood?
I mean, I think it would be nice to extend Asty Park, actually. Oh, I guess the town would have to buy the properties. Maybe it wouldn't be
Never
nice.
mind.
Forget it.
You didn't hear that from me.
But I think you're right. I think where is that transition, right? And so maybe maybe the recommendation that comes out of this is it's, kind of bound by First Avenue and actually, west of First. The recommendation is to consider residential uses, so.
Yeah. I'd actually probably go farther and be like, as long as it's not fronting McCaslin, residential would be fine.
Yep.
It's the property right over here,
Yeah, it's right across the road from town.
Yeah, but like,
across the parking lot.
oh no, it has no parking. It's,
It's not obviously desirable for commercial use.
So here's my, this is do we need more town office space?
We are having a work session on that conversation on March 3rd. We also own the rest of the property behind this building too.
Right.
So,
And
yeah.
so, just a thought, it's right over here.
As you know, we used to have town offices on that
I know.
piece. Town board or town council's having that conversation. We've had a conversation last year. We're going to continue the conversation in March at a work session, right? Just to think about workforce planning and then potential locations where that workforce should go. So I think it's timely with this conversation.
Okay.
I just wonder if this should be more flexible in its use. It could be residential,
That is
it
an
could
option,
be
for sure.
town, it could be,
I think we'll work on revising that and adding neighborhood, commercial, and residential, again, as you transition into original town before we go public with this one.
Yep.
Okay.
Are there any further comments on? What? Oh, Steve's gone dark. David, Anne? Oh, okay, great.
Downtown, obviously, a lot going on here. Great visibility from 36 and McCaslin. Good traffic volume to support commercial. Blue Sports Stable, again, strong, out of the ordinary, great anchor for downtown. Office development we're seeing is probably pretty necessary to help with the vibrancy and activity to support those businesses. And then there's a desire for more restaurant, retail, and entertainment uses downtown.
How about one?
Exactly.
It's coming.
Growing population,
I'm waiting.
distinct identity, and then opportunities for more events and daily civic activities. So 2012 future land use is pretty much the same as what we see going forward. Additional mixed use. Town center was kind of how it was branded back then, and it has, materialized in that way. And so continuing to understand what unique businesses can move in and what makes the most sense for the spaces available, and continuing to build out in downtown.
What does mixed use actually mean?
It's so many things. You can talk about mixed use in a vertical or a horizontal way. I think in downtown, it is more intended to be more vertical mixed use with potentially a business in the first floor, more active uses in the first floor, and then residential above, but.
Yeah, I think it's just thinking about, like, maybe if you think about Rock Creek, right? Like, we have Rock Creek Village, kind of all clustered in one corner, and then we have the single-family homes, right? And they're very distinct and separate. I think the uses blend a lot more in a more compact area in a mixed-use environment.
But basically, we've done we've approved final development plans for the whole of that area, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think we also need to think that, yes, we've approved FDPs. Not all of them are built. And as we've seen, sometimes things change more quickly than we expect. And so I don't think we're proposing, necessarily changes to the PD at this time, but just policies that support ongoing success, allowances for transition of uses and changing economies and things.
Is there any change between the 2012 use and the 2024? Is town center the same thing as mixed use? Or are they different?
I don't think we've gotten that granular yet.
Okay.
I think at this point, we're saying that, I think the intent is still the same as of right now, and that's what we're going to take to the community. But I think a bigger question for me, and Lisa, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is like, are we dead set on retail, or are some office uses going to kind of fold in to downtown?
Yeah, we have the 2 lots that have been approved for office development. I guess I kind of think about, maybe if the hotel sites don't develop. Right now, the PD only, says only hotel, right? So do we want to just put in some policies that maybe, on sites that haven't yet developed, we would consider entertainment uses or other, office uses or things, right? Just to put some policies in there that where the PD is pretty strict, kind of open the door to, again, change, or, we don't have to, but.
I thought the
PD.
Yes, again, this is the first, yes, this is not zoning.
the PD for this area, a lot of it was flex space, right? So.
In the downtown core, yeah.
So would that need to change? It sounds like maybe you're thinking about what happens if this life sciences building never materialized.
Well, and I think the zoning would accommodate other uses. To your point, it's flex, right? So it doesn't say it has to be office, but I think, again, broad thinking in terms of the community, right? Like we have to start thinking about redevelopment and change, again, like in the areas like the Marketplace and Rock Creek, and downtown's not quite to that point yet, but I think we want to just think about policies that can support, things that we can't quite see yet.
I think some leniency for the hotel that burned down is reasonable. It's a little bit of bad juju right now there, so there might not be someone wanting to build a hotel back. I also wanted to point out that we have that Discovery Office Park there, which is not.
Talk about that separate. That's a separate area.
I'm still.
Then I will wait.
But maybe you could be a little clearer. I'm sorry, I'm probably being extremely dumb this evening, but I'm still not quite clear on what you're really thinking, in terms of alternatives for this.
I don't think it actually changes a lot of the policies we probably have. I think this is just a continuation of, let's do what we can to build community, build vibrancy, and build out downtown. If I was going to summarize it maybe that way.
Are there small things that we could do, like make the live-work spaces easier to rent or something like that? Is that?
Yeah. I think we're thinking more about not necessarily broad land use changes, but more, I think, kind of like higher level, efforts that the town could make or recognize to continue to realize, I think, again, building the community there and then ensuring it develops.
Clearly everybody who says they want restaurants and coffee shops and things, retail really means along the main street, right?
And Creekview Way. And, primarily Main Street and then like Creekview Way. And then Superior Drive, downtown core maybe is a better way to say it, yeah.
Are there any current ideas for how to attract that development? Or should we be suggesting, do you have, sorry,
No, you're fine. I think it's right now what we're trying to determine is this, are we going in the right direction? Is this, is the original vision for downtown Superior, does that still fit with what the community wants to see happen and how it's been progressing over time? And then once we determine like exactly, what the community's looking for in general, then we can start to look at strategies for how to incentivize that.
Thank you, that's much more clear than what I was trying to
And I
say.
guess in terms of a broad-ranging picture, I think the answer is that it's consistent and that it's continuing.
That's what we have heard so far.
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I've heard a lot of complaints that all the flex space ended up being residential when it was supposed to be a mix of activities. So I think if you came back and said, we want more residential, or we think it should be more of it should be residential, that there'd be a lot, that would create pushback from.
I don't think, unless, I agree with you, I don't know that the community is going to say, I think the community is going to want to build out the uses that aren't there yet. And I think whatever policies we put in here, I think are going to be geared toward that, through that lens.
I would say anything you can come up with in a policy that helps that happen would be a really good policy to have, actually.
Great.
I just want to say that this is confusing and that maybe you should think of some because it looks like you're saying we want to keep something the same, but it's mostly built out, but it's just really confusing what the opportunity and what the changes would be, if any.
That's good feedback.
Right.
Okay.
Speaking of Discovery Office Park, some of the site factors here, terrain is difficult, which really increases construction costs. There is an existing multi-tenant office use, which could mean more offices is needed. But again, the market for office uses is softer. There's a really strong interest for residential development. It is adjacent to open space and trails and downtown. 2012 showed commercial use, which isn't necessarily different from office, but I think in envisioning the future of this site, we were really considering what parcels left in town are potentially viable for office, and due to its adjacency, I said we really determined that this one is, and potentially it's a holdout for the town. There are others that we're going to get to that really, as much as the town would like the sales tax benefit from them being more commercial or office, it just doesn't make sense based on the market and where things are right now. This is one that at least our market consultants said that it's potentially worth holding out for. Lisa, anything to
Is
add?
this,
For what?
Office.
Office use.
is this this is not the affordable housing
No, the
55
kite routes at the bottom of this.
pink.
Yeah.
pink?
So-
The thing about it being office space is that solitary office has been, when was it built? Anybody know? The current office up there.
Discovery Park, no.
I want to say like 2001, I'm not sure.
It's been there for over 20 years then, and nobody's shown any signs of wanting to build any more offices up there, even at a time,
Build that one.
or even fill that one, even at a time when office building was, they built offices all over Interlochen Business Park. They've been many office buildings over there, and nobody's shown any interest in this site. So I'd be interested to know why your economic development consultant thinks anybody will be interested in the next 20 years, actually.
And I think that's a really great question, and another one that we definitely want to test out with the community. But I think it's more of when we're weighing different land uses on different properties that are available for development or redevelopment, this is one of the only real viable ones for future office. Yeah.
I think it'd be great if somebody did build an office
Yeah.
over there, but I think even the Key Bank building is half empty, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
So if the suggestion is to change the draft, to the future land use from commercial to office, this is one area where I'm wondering why you're saying office and not office or residential.
You tell us. We were, I think, again, looking long-term for kind of the completeness of our community. We thought if additional office, again, to Nora's point, is going to happen, here is where it's likely, but we get strong market interest for residential on this site all the time. So I think if Planning Commission, again, would like to add residential to the potential uses on here, I would imagine it would, if that is the final recommendation, this would be developed very quickly.
I don't think that many people, I mean, I'd ask Commission. I mean, personally, I wouldn't object to residential on this site. I mean, it's right next to downtown. It's right next to, what is it, Waterford is the development up the top of the hill there. I mean, if you could do the residential around the existing office building and make it a nice development, I mean, that would seem to, is that disadvantageous to the town?
If
in
you're
some way?
asking for a planning commissioner's input, I'll be happy to give you and suggest residential as a possibility.
Okay, that's two of us. Who else? Who else feels?
Yeah, I think on a lot of these you have like what it was and then what you're recommending. But I think that, yeah, maybe you should have like multiple recommendations. And then when you go to the next phase, you can see, because I want to know what all the neighbors think. Like, it's easy for me who lives 5, 6 ways away to say, oh yeah, residential's there, fine. But I mean, if the neighbors also think it's fine, then, and it's kind of on a hill, so it's already blocking people's view. I don't know.
We can add residential to the discussion.
Yeah, we have several parcels that we'll get to later, but that have two potential uses, so.
Okay.
I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah, neither would I.
I mean, Ryan, David, Ann, you have any comment? David looks like he wants to comment.
Yeah, I endorse the idea of residential here, and I am a neighbor. Open space would be preferable, but I know that that's probably not practical. One thing that really hasn't been discussed yet, and maybe you're going to get to it, is the need for deed-restricted affordable housing, workforce housing, essential housing for town employees, teachers, people that the town needs to function, and this would be a great location for that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you for that. And that is absolutely something that we will be addressing in the policies within the plan. The issue with assigning a particular parcel of land for that is that it has to pencil out for the developer. Like, the developer has to see it, have a vision for it, and be able to purchase the property at what it's, for sale for, and then be able to make it happen with whatever tax credits that they are awarded or so on and so forth. So I think within, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I think within the policies of this plan, we've heard overwhelmingly affordable housing it's something that needs to be addressed within the plan. I think any areas that we designate for future residential development are opportunities for affordable housing. I think if we were to assign a land use for affordable housing on a property that's not owned by the town, it's kind of a pipe dream.
I agree. I think the property owner would have to say, you know what, I know I can build and pencil and I have development partners that this site will be affordable housing. But I think in terms of what she said, and if you remember back on the housing slide, one of the implications is basically anytime we add housing, we need to factor in the affordable housing component for it. And our code requires some degree of affordable housing with all new
Take care of it
residential.
later.
So,
Steve, do you have a comment?
yeah.
I'm in agreement. I like the idea of residential, so.
Ryan? I'm good. You're good. So it looks like the planning commission thinks that residential would be a good opportunity, or should be considered for this site should at least be considered along with office use for this site.
I also wonder if there shouldn't be something in the plan that says, as a kind of incentive for affordable housing, in that the town will give preference to converting other uses to residential if that residential is affordable housing, which I think it's true. Like, if it just saying, oh, we're going to have residential that's on these sites, or that's a future use, but like instead saying, yeah, we're going to this is fine unless that new residential is going to be affordable housing, and then we will consider, like, that's such a priority for the town that we'll consider changing uses to
Could do something
gain
like that too.
Well, I think
affordable housing.
if you say I think what I've heard about the kite route anyway is that the town is offering concessions, right, on tap fees and all that kind of stuff. So that would sort of, if somebody comes along and says, I'd like to build affordable housing, the town is already, in some senses, stepping up to help them do that.
We are, but I think to Commissioner Vaughn's point, I think in terms of a land use policy on a piece of property, like potentially this one, right? Like the primary or the preferred use, maybe, this is a hypothetical, maybe the preferred use for the site is office. However, if a development that includes housing in excess of, the town's code for affordable housing is proposed, then the town would support that use, right? So I think we could potentially look at a little bit of a.
I mean, personally, I'd rather not restrict it. If you're going to say it could be residential, then I'd like to make it residential and just see how it plays out when people come to talk to us.
Yeah, I don't know about assigning this policy to a specific land, but maybe adding some sort of affordable housing guidance
Yes, that would be.
in there, and saying that this is such a desire for this town that there's some guide, and just seeing if there's buy-in from the residents that
That would be.
giving this preferential to converting to housing if it's affordable.
Maybe we can add that to like the housing slide as like a potential implication for adding, for like the housing section, is like adding verbiage that says something along those lines. For any residential or, any property that is, I don't know,
Viable for
Viable.
residential use.
viable. There
We don't
go,
want,
that's the
we
word.
don't want the properties that are not viable for residential use to
yeah.
give preference to affordable housing over other uses that are not.
Right.
that
Or
are more
something
viable,
along
but
those
yeah.
lines, like we
Yeah,
can play
absolutely,
with
yeah.
that, but.
Yeah, and it's just giving the planning commission tools later when we're evaluating.
Just
Future uses.
remember what you're saying, because like, we've got another slide coming up that
Okay.
you're gonna like even better.
All right. I haven't read ahead if you
No,
haven't read
go,
as I like to say, what about discovery?
boom.
There he is. This one's a tricky one. So it has technically visibility from 36, lack of access though. And there are no future plans for future access from 36. So we're dealing with the bridge that we have today. No transit, light industrial would likely make the neighbors completely unglued. The reservoir is a nice, attractive feature, but there is some wildlife and bird habitat. There is terrain, which again adds to construction cost, but there is walkability to local schools. So The 2012 plan said they wanted mixed use. In conversations with the landowners, and we had a lot of big feelings coming out in these meetings that we were talking to them about. So we've opened it up to consider mixed use or just straight medium density residential on the site.
We've had some very, I mean, in my opinion, what were very nice proposals for residential development that got shot down. I think technically you can build a 60-foot high office building on this, or maybe even a 90-foot high office building on this, which nobody is ever going to do.
There's no.
And I mean, every time this comes up as residential development, everybody says there's so much wildlife there. I went over there and looked at it when they were doing the reconstruction on 88th Street, which happened, 2 or 3 years ago. All the birds on that reservoir looked perfectly happy while all the construction work was going on beside them. So, I mean, the people who live in that area are more interested in homes for prairie dogs than they are for homes for people. So that's why it's always gone up in smoke for some reason or other. But I strongly support medium density residential. And one of the developers was even doing senior housing there.
Absolutely, that is the location. And that's why I said, here's the slides coming up. Because if we ever wanted to promote a development for affordable housing or senior housing, that's the location.
Yeah. And maybe that's the carrot, but I don't know, you have to rein in the neighbors. I don't know. I don't live too far from here and I had no problem with housing, but I don't live across the reservoir from it.
I don't think it was the people across the reservoir who were the problem. It was the people on the other side of 88th Street.
Really?
Yeah,
Which is like their backyard.
yeah, exactly. They like having, I mean, it's very reasonable, actually. I like having open space in my backyard, and they like having open space in theirs.
I support this.
Yes.
David?
And I think the idea behind mixed use was not necessarily like, retail on the bottom floor and residential above. It was more of like, if there's like a Lifetime Fitness or like some kind of like commercial use that draws people in from around and doesn't have to be pedestrian oriented, that could also benefit the town in some way. But again, like, I don't think that if these folks who have been begging and begging for residential come back with a decent plan, that it's necessarily denied.
Because it doesn't have the 7-Eleven that they wanted to put in there.
They put that in because they were trying to do the commercial.
I know, that's what
It just kept getting worse.
So, I support this.
Actually, maybe we should take mixed use out and just say it's got to be medium density.
And that's, again, that's a great question for you all, for council.
I would love to see the greater town and what they think for this area, because I have a feeling that the negativity is very localized and the rest of the town,
Sure.
not so much.
Yeah. Okay.
No comment on that.
I hope you don't live just across the other side of 88th Street.
No, but I do like the prairie dog.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
House.
I think any policies for this, though, will include some considerations for existing wildlife, right? I mean, we have the birds and the natural habitat, right? So I think any development will have to honor, at least to some degree, some of that.
Yeah, and any smart developer will work with topography and things like that.
Steve? Oops, can you hear me? You're looking rather weary. Are you okay?
Muted.
David?
I think it's an inappropriate site for any kind of commercial or mixed use. So I would support the designation of residential.
Anne?
My only concern is that we've just talked about a couple of different properties that had some possibility of bringing in tax revenue, and we're saying residential. So I just think we need to kind of keep track, that we don't box ourselves out of too much tax revenue generation down the road. I think the neighbors would be much happier with residential than commercial. And if we could do affordable, that'd be awesome. So,
I don't know, would we recommend taking out mixed use from this, or just saying it should be medium to, I guess mixed use could be mostly residential, right?
It just offers the opportunity if the developer wants to
Okay.
include a level of commercial. And then this is also a question that we can bring to the council next week. If that's a
fine.
recommendation, a potential recommendation from the commission.
I just want to say my nightmare on this is that they were going to do like storage sheds. Like, you know, they were just going to be like, all right, we can put storage sheds in here and just, it's according to code and then the neighbors would have been livid, but they would have got what they.
Be careful what you hope for.
All right, Resolute. We've got no visibility from 36, but Colton Road and Summit have good collector traffic volumes. There's adjacency to Flatiron Crossing and other commercial development in Broomfield. There's difficult soils, construction costs, you'll hear it again. And then 2 bodies of water for water quality protection. But it is still a really critical spot for potential tax generating revenue. Future land use from 2012 was commercial. What we had thought was that this could potentially be another holdout for commercial.
Yeah, there was a really nice concept plan developed for this
Yeah.
2 years ago. No, it was a hotel and stores and
Yep.
some residential, right? So
Yep.
It was mixed use.
It was.
Am I remembering
So
it correctly?
here's my question. The Coble property, is that part of
no, so you can see that's the orange that kind of wraps up around the lake and,
It
yep.
was part of the original Resolute property, but
Right.
now
but it's 2 parcels now.
it's separate.
This is
yeah.
1,
This
2,
is what's
3,
left
4,
of-
5 parcels here on the
Yeah,
corner.
5 parcels, but
And then that's all
a
the,
distinctive difference. So when we're talking about the opportunity area now as opposed to 2012,
Right.
we're talking about what's left and not what we have allowed.
All right, so the sort of orangey is what they're building now.
Yeah.
yes.
And this is across the piece from them. And did they own it?
No,
It's still Resolute.
yes.
Got it, okay.
Just out of curiosity, what did the people who gave us the concept plan ever show any further interest in it?
And I thought we were pretty high on it too. So, this is great.
We like commercial here.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think with all the redevelopment at the mall, like this will become more valuable.
Absolutely, yeah, I think
One
so.
hopes.
One hope.
I think if we're going to do anything here, I think maybe just some policies around like guidance for the developer on what type of commercial, like are we okay with pad site development? Do we want additional height on here? Do we want, just if there's any sort of characteristics we want to think about as, not today, but just kind of, as we are finalizing drafts in the future, characteristics for types of commercial development.
What would the height limit be today?
It's pretty high. I think it's that RAC zoning, so
Yeah.
like 70 or 80 feet.
Have a nice day.
You've made the point about difficult soils, but I thought pretty much everywhere has difficult soils around here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Town 15, everyone's favorite topic.
Oh, yeah.
Some site factors, we have some very vocal neighbors with some single-family detached residences and then open space, really no highway visibility or transit. Good aesthetics and trail connectivity, really looking at future wildfire risks when thinking about the use of this site. And then the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Plan does look at this site for park and recreational amenities, including a potential site for a recreation center.
Is
So
that
we've,
Is that what the civic means?
yes.
Library, rec center, future town facilities, what have you, just kind of basically town-oriented uses.
As opposed to parks and open space?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yes,
Could be
and I
either.
think.
I've spoken to the neighbors, of all those people in the sort of yellowish up there. The lawsuit is already starting of you developing this other than parks and open space.
Well, again, our position right now for starting is, I think we agree that this is a good site for potential civic uses. I think residential, as we know, has come up from time to time where, staff isn't starting from a position of that. As we all know, the site is zoned commercial, right? So, but I think,
I'm just mentioning it again.
Yeah.
Because as you move forward and you're gonna, talk about this publicly, this is the piece of property that's gonna get the most pushback from the neighbors about the possibility of building anything in there that is constructed of any material other than dirt,
Even a recreation center?
even a recreation.
I think that this is again where the surrounding neighbors have a very different view than the rest of the town.
Yes.
I'm not disagreeing.
And I just had a question about civic. Would that include what if a YMCA wanted to come in?
yeah, I think that could fall under that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm all for civic then. No open space.
Since we've already said that the town has a surprising 40% of the town is open space or something like that, requiring that this particular lot be kept as additional open space seems perhaps a little extreme.
It is tough that an adopted plan has identified it as park recreational, and that doesn't mean it has to be that, but it is, we do need to acknowledge that plan was adopted, and
I think through all of our engagement, verbally, we're going to have conversations about all of this, right? And accept input for other uses on this, so.
To the extent that this changes from commercial to parks, open space, or civic, I think it's a good idea. Because if the worry is that that the town could either do it by themselves or sell the property to a commercial opportunity, that alone is going to cause people to be wild. And so taking it away from that as a possibility then just means, okay, it could be parks, it could be soccer fields, it could be just total open space, leave it the way it is, or the possibility might be of a rec center or whatever. It's a much better discussion than a shopping center.
Or residential.
And residential is not happening.
That's what.
Residential is not happening?
No, not if you change it to this.
Oh, right.
But right now, it's a possibility.
It's, I
Well,
mean,
no,
it's
it's
actually
commercial.
not either, yeah.
It's only commercial. So
Yeah.
when it says mixed use, it's really not.
That's the land use policy in the current comp plan, the zoning's commercial.
But it wouldn't be residential, let's put it that way, unless you add residential as a land use.
I would say residential is a lot more viable on this site than commercial is.
Yeah.
Is there some, apart from the local neighbors, is there a sort of practical or philosophical objection to making residential allowable on this? It's right across the street from Calmantic. That's residential.
I think it's a political conversation. I think it's entirely, I think staff did not want to presume a change beyond what was in the Prost plan. And I think through our conversations with the public, we'll acknowledge, I think to Nora's point, this is a viable site for residential, and at least say that out loud. And if people would like to add that,
The only, since this is town-owned, it becomes it's a bigger issue if one turns it into allowing a residential use unless the town decides to develop a residential use.
partner with somebody, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, if you ask me, do I think this ought to be considered for residential use on the face of it, I just say yes. I mean, anybody else feel that way?
I wonder, because the town owns the land, would this be a real opportunity for some affordable housing, maybe small-scale services that would fit in that context?
Absolutely. I mean, I think to your point about affordable housing, because we own the land and presume we don't want to make money off transacting on a development, we are reducing the cost of the overall development because we own the land. That's a pretty significant impact. And then I think partnering with other folks, for, other, again, civic or service-oriented type uses. Certainly, because we own it, we actually have a big advantage on those things. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, and
How about this? How about we, if y'all head nod, we suggest to council that Planning Commission is comfortable including residential on this as a starting point for discussion with the public, and we see how, you don't want residential, okay.
I would say no to residential.
Okay,
I'm not inclined to that one.
okay, so we have not heard a consensus on that, never mind.
Parks open,
Okay.
civic, take it away from commercial, make everybody smile and all this, but going broader than that, I think is going to create some big issues.
I'm gonna,
Yeah, I
gonna
feel, sorry.
Steve?
Go
I'm
ahead.
going to throw my 2 cents in real quick. I don't think we should acquiesce to 10 neighbors or 15 neighbors just because they threaten a lawsuit. I think that we shouldn't make decisions based on that, because we would have not done the town center because of the threat from all the other neighbors up there. So I don't think that's the right reason not to do commercial. I agree. I don't think commercial is good on that site, but I don't think our decision should be based on what the neighbors surrounding that are going to do. So I do like the idea of residential, and I really like the affordable. But when we talked about putting affordable there like 3 years ago, one of the points that someone brought up, and I don't remember who it was, is that you like to have affordable housing closer to services.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's no services next to that,
Not even bus service.
for a mile or so. And again, I don't know if I'm right on thinking that way or not, but I like the idea of affordable because I think it's a great location for it, but I get concerned about that. How do they get services? So.
Good point, Steve.
We need more buses from the transportation plan.
Yeah.
I'm not here for
Well, my feeling on this is that because it's town-owned, whatever use it goes should help like everyone in the town. And I feel like affordable housing or, these sorts of things are just, they're helping just a smaller part where we could put like a rec center or something civic that would help everyone in the town. That's why I'm not residential, is that it seems like it would just help a smaller part. And this is the last big piece of property where we could build a library or any of that.
It depends. I mean, the town, I think, we had the town, we passed the sales tax increase or maintaining it at the same level. And that, I think, generated something like 22 million. Is that about right? 22 million in funds?
Are you talking about the open space tax?
No, the continuation of the tax that we were paying for the.
For the sales tax for the CIP projects. Yeah, there's going to be, those are already going to be allocated with,
That money is already spent. So, but when I was talking to some of the town council, they said actually there's about $50 million worth of projects that the town would like to undertake, and it only got about 22 or 23 million from the sales tax increase. So a perfectly logical way of benefiting the whole town from this would actually be to sell it and use the money to do whatever is left on that list of things that the town couldn't afford from the sales tax increase.
Either way, we would have to come up with a preferred land use, right? Whether the town remains in ownership of the property or we decide that we would want to sell it. I think deciding the land use of what happens there has to happen either way.
I mean, I think for me, if residential remains fine, even if the town has to sell the land.
Something in the back of my memory says that when the town bought the property some years ago, there was some strings attached to it. I don't know the answer. I'm
not aware of any
throw it out
official
there,
strings.
because I think that's why it was zoned commercial in the first place. But I don't know the answer, so I just send it out, to something to find out about. But I'm happy with changing it from commercial / mixed use to parks, open space, civic.
Am I the last person left who thinks residential would be a good idea? I mean, I don't know.
She was definitely.
And liked it. And I think Steve liked it too.
Steve, you're a residential person?
Yeah, he's a residential.
Ryan, do you have a view on residential?
I agree along the lines of keeping residential as a available option as we approach the public and, get feedback. But, beyond that,
Well, I think it would be fair to say that the planning commission had mixed views on
That's fair. We can do that.
I can
on
also,
residential, but
Don't worry, I'm not gonna have a lawsuit.
we are not thinking of suing the town.
I would also add, as an impartial consultant, that I think a really good way to think of affordable housing is as infrastructure, because the folks that live in affordable housing are the people that work in the areas around where we are and things like that. And then additionally, if you're thinking of infrastructure as investments for the entire community, it's one way to think I
not only agree with you, I've been pushing for
That solves a little
housing
more.
for town staff for
Absolutely, yeah.
5 years now.
Yeah.
Well, here's your opportunity.
I know.
And there are so many different levels of what affordable housing is, different AMI levels, things like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be deeply affordable where folks don't have cars or things like that. When you're thinking about, obviously.
We just have to have a bus.
There are some very nice.
I'm hot on this bus.
If you go over and look at Kestrel in Lafayette, it doesn't look like, you can't tell it's any different from any other housing in that area.
Absolutely, yeah.
actually.
There's some really great ways to do
Okay.
housing.
So one last thing, is there a way to give this a designation that allows the town to just sit on it? Why is there a rush to develop this, in my mind, golden
I think
parcel?
honestly, if it gets designated parks or civic, it de facto is a hold because we don't have budget for any improvements here. So I think that's a good point. But I think that's also an option. I think if we leave it undetermined, we're going to have the continued discussion every time somebody says, hey, what about, right? So I think it might be nice to kind of, at least for this next life cycle of a comprehensive plan, to kind of all agree on this is what we want together as a community. But I think to some degree, if it doesn't go residential, it's a de facto hold because of a budgetary constraint.
I want to follow up on that question for a second. This was the piece of property where as I was thinking about all the opportunity zones, that I said to myself, it's a long time between now and 10 years from now. And if we were to postpone moratorium, an issue, this would be the one that I would be thinking of. That is, we are not ready to make a decision. We even on the viability of the property for a while, because I'm not sure what's going to be in 5 years.
And because we own the
Just one
land,
person's
we
viewpoint.
could potentially do that. I mean, I think we'll have to let's see where this goes.
Yes, and not, again, coming in impartial consultant, but as one small piece of town-owned land that's not developed, this is a huge if you are going to have leverage to build affordable housing in this community, that's one of the primary ways that you can do it, is to sell the land either at a discounted rate or just give it to an affordable housing developer. But it's one of the only ways that you can really make affordable housing development happen is when you're a landowner. Just a consideration.
I get it.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gross, did you have something to add?
So, oh,
No, that was my statement. Just go slow on this one.
Okay.
This one's going to probably take up as much discussion as maybe the rest combined.
so where are we going to leave this? We think it ought to, I mean, there's 4 of us for residential and 3
Well,
of us against.
I think you were right in saying, okay, well, so far the planning commission is very in favor of changing this from commercial/mixed use to parks, open space, or civic, and they were mixed on the issue of whether or not to include residential.
And then we'll take that to council and see what council says before we go to the public.
I could make it more complicated and say I'm against using it as parks or open space, but never mind.
Well, I was just going to say, I'd be okay with saying, I think I've been convinced that affordable housing, but not residential, affordable housing in this. And you could say that since we own the property.
Okay. Lisa?
All right, so I'm going to kind of bring it home here. So I think the final thing, this kind of key component of the comprehensive plan are vision and values, right? And so vision really kind of sets Commissioner Rose's point, where are we going? Where do we want to go as a community? What's our collective goals? Where would we like to be? And then the values really are the kind of, again, values that we lean on when making these future decisions, right? And so we've put in here our 2012 comprehensive plan, vision and values. This is kind of a combined statement. I think for the next phase of this, we're going to pull this apart a little bit and talk about what the difference is with the public between vision and values, right? Those are kind of different things. So this statement, what we have before kind of blends these two concepts. But when we looked at that, we realized that we heard a lot of public input regarding some things that are not included in our current vision and values. And so I think the thing for now that we want to just acknowledge and get your take on, community-wide values that we heard a lot about were kind of cultural inclusivity and equity. We don't have anything in our current vision and values that talk about that. Housing diversity and affordability, thoughtful community engagement, and then resilience within our natural environment and community systems. So we're curious to see if you feel like there's any other values as a community that we need to be taking forward and including in the next version of our vision and values. But really, I think, just so you know, we intend to kind of pull this apart, break it down when we go out to the public, add in these additional community-wide values, and then we'll kind of work together to put it all back together into a vision statement, as well as what are the community values we're going to lean on when we make decisions. So, because as we all know, sometimes scenarios happen that don't neatly align with our comprehensive plan or a circumstance change. And I think if we have a framework of values that we can point to when we're making these decisions in the future, that I think it's really helpful guidance that can come from a comprehensive plan. So I'm not sure if you've anything else you want to add to that, Nora?
No, that was perfect.
Thanks, Lisa.
I like the additional ones that you want to add.
Are we missing any?
Oh, it's late.
It's fair.
Oh, wow. Slate. Sorry.
If you can't think now and you
It's all
think of
good.
something, you can let us know. You can email us.
It's all good.
Okay. Great.
Okay, great.
All right.
Next steps, next week, council presentation. We are going to be holding a speaker series, which is a fun little activity where we'll bring in an expert in certain topics and bring the community together, invite them to participate, have this person do a quick little TED Talk, and then do some interactive conversations around the topic. And so we've got some kind of preliminary 4 topics here: housing, economic development, resiliency, and cultural inclusivity and equity as potential topics. But we are very open to your and the council's input on that. And then we are looking to have an open house in April or May. And then we'll be starting to develop some potential growth alternatives, particularly as it comes to those opportunity areas that we discussed today, later in the spring and early summer.
So I think we're looking for feedback, on that. I think our contract, just to be clear, with Cushing Terrell includes 5 speaker series. So I think if you all are okay with those 4 and you're not sure what else to come up with, we would plug transportation into that 5th one. But we could also cover that kind of under the transportation.
What was the one you were saying that was like an excellent presentation that we?
Oh, the demographer presentation?
Yeah, maybe that one.
I think you ought to have something on transportation because it's on everybody's mind, basically.
Yeah, and I think housing, maybe we tie in the demographics to the housing conversation, right? What's changing? What do we need to think about accommodating in terms of housing?
And
Yeah.
economic development.
And economic development, probably both of those. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to bring up, in terms of housing diversity. Because how many times tonight did you say housing diversity?
Yeah. So just to really drill down on kind of what those options are, and
Yeah.
when we think about housing, just, okay, yeah.
Do you have the slides from the demography study?
Yeah.
Could you send those out?
Yeah, I think we can
Yeah,
share those.
we can show
Yeah,
those.
so I'll send an email
Yeah.
with those slides for all of you.
It was
to
pretty
review.
interesting.
That means I have to check that email.
Yeah, because it's interesting.
I'm really bad at checking town.
And one sort of chicken and egg thought we had was we kind of have gone back and forth in terms of timing. Do we do the speaker series to kind of educate people on certain topics they're interested in before we start to do the open house to dive into making recommendations? Or do we do the open house to pique people's interest and then maybe like, oh, you know what? Actually, I'd like to learn a little bit more about this topic and then hold the speaker series. So I mean, we have kind of, I think, gone back and forth, and I'm just wondering from your perspective what you think the community might respond to.
Well, I guess part of the answer to that depends on what are you hoping to get out of the open house.
Yeah, the open house will be presenting a little bit more high-level results from the existing conditions report, and then talking about these future land use areas. So really, I think, in my mind, the open house is really more geared towards land use and then helping understand the community's feedback on what we heard from the first round of engagement and what we learned from existing conditions.
Confirming vision and values.
Yeah, and then confirming vision and values. And then the speaker series is really more focused into each of those topics.
On those, if you're going to do that at the open house, I understand that you'll use the whole of April and the whole of May to accomplish it.
Who is the audience for the speaker series?
We'll have an educated guest speaker that's a subject matter expert in the topic that's giving us a talk about what the regional needs for housing and the trends that are happening in housing and real estate. And then the audience is really anybody who's interested in that topic within the town or the region.
So what is the venue?
Probably the community center, but it could also be strategic based on the topic. We could do economic development in a space within Superior Marketplace or downtown, or Yeah, that's,
I'm a big fan of giving out information before you have the discussion.
sure.
So if you're asking which one do you want to do first, I'd say do the speaker series and then do the open house, because then the open house can, assuming people went to the speaker
Yeah.
series, a lot of the discussion could be, okay, as you heard then, all right, now let's talk about this, kind of thing.
And I think, ideally, we'd figure out how to tape the speaker series, or maybe figure out a way, if, they went to the open house and now, I wish they could get caught up to.
And I don't think it has to be an either or. I don't think we have to do all of the speaker series before the open house. I think it's going to need to come together somewhat organically and based on people's availability and venue availability and things like that. So I don't think we have to make a hard and fast decision tonight, but.
I think we should have a good process for reaching a decision from that open house. Because, you can tell just from the variety of opinions here, and the different opinions that we've heard when some of the development projects have come up, that there are a lot of strongly held and conflicting opinions on many of those sites. So, having an open house, how you get from starting with the open house to actually getting through it to coming to a conclusion from it. No?
I think that's why the values conversation is so important, because I think there's going to be a lot of values that maybe conflict, that we express as a community, that might conflict with, what the land use decisions are. So I think having a community-wide conversation about what do we value, where we want to go, and then what are those land uses that can support that?
And the trade-offs.
And the trade-offs, because it's a lot of trade-offs, yeah.
I wonder also if one of the speakers should just, I think the whole school maybe closing, that kind of stuff might be an interesting topic.
We can talk to BVSD and see if, they used to do more kind of out engagement with communities, but we could see if, I think in my mind, that's kind of a relationship with housing too. So.
Yeah, I would lean on their guidance for
Yeah.
that. We don't necessarily want to open up a conversation that's less of a conversation and more of people showing up with pitchforks and very upset.
BVSD would have to lead
But
that.
I would say, yes,
Yeah.
we're absolutely going to coordinate with BVSD.
Okay, does anybody have, do we have any more questions or comments for Nora or Lisa or Renee? Ryan?
Thank you for sticking with us. This was
Yes,
a lot
I'm
of discussion.
sorry it was so long, but I appreciate your time so much.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say thank you for a great presentation.
No, thank you.
Yes. Thank you for putting it all together as well.
Thanks for having such a great staff. They've been a dream to work with, so.
I really appreciate that too. Thank you. Okay, do you have any updates for us?
We do have a quick update slide for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, do you want to do these? Am I doing these?
Yeah, so these, I didn't change them from the last updates that we did because you guys had questions that I didn't have a lot of answers for. So we don't have to go through each of these projects or upcoming things. But the one thing is the last bullet. We are planning our next meeting to present to you a municipal code update on February 18th, which includes meeting the ADU bill requirements, the parking requirements, and then we're getting rid of the occupancy requirement that is already
In effect.
So that's kind of my update on that. You'll get more in 2 weeks on the municipal code update.
Yeah, so just one quick note. Council approved the housing strategies last week. So I don't know if you saw, there was a nice article in the paper, but that housing strategies did get adopted. It did kind of get tweaked quite a bit based on your feedback. So, and then council actually pulled the commercial and residential linkage fee. So that action got pulled from the final plan, but we're really happy to get that across the finish line. Kite Route Crossing, the affordable housing development, we received an invitation just in terms of where we are with that one. Again, the developer is really trying to firm up the financing gap. And so we received an invitation to apply for Prop 123 funds to cover land banking, should be $1.6 million. So that application goes in Monday. The program is still oversubscribed, but it's kind of a two-step application process. The first was to submit a letter of intent. We did that back in September. They kind of previewed them and whittled out a bunch, and then we got an invitation to apply. So they're going to still have to kind of thin the list, but we're optimistic that we get that. Community Foundation has committed funds for that development, provided on first lease up. We prioritize folks who are impacted from Marshall Fire. So that's great news. We have a letter of support for $500,000 from them. We have to execute a grant agreement for that. And then through DOLA, through the CDGB DR disaster recovery funds, they have provided a letter stating $512,000 can be go to that project to fund infrastructure, again, provided we prioritize Marshall Fire folks on first lease up. So working with Community Foundation and DOLA to firm up, we have letters of commitment, but working with them to firm up the agreements in terms of true grant agreements. And then finally, their 9% LIHTC application went in yesterday. So there's, I think, we're feeling more optimistic than we were a year ago, but we've got these pieces really the dominoes need to continue to fall. And then any other, I know you had questions on that. Are there any other questions y'all had? Okay.
Great.
Great. The 18th works for you all? Or enough of you?
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate all the information you've given us this evening.
Thanks for all your willingness to dive in.
Okay. And Karen, one thing. Meeting's adjourned.
Recording stopped.
Yeah, that was the longest one in a long time.
Good job,
Good job.